The boy with the scarf on his head is scared and asked the woman about her aggressive behavior. Apologizing for the trap, Asuda has a sword pointed at him and says, he just wants to know where he is as he arrived recently and didn't recognize the place. The Wondan says it's a forest at the foot of Mount Morga, a territory of the Jungle Kingdom governed by the local Lord Jinos. But he finds it strange and asks if the woman knows about Chiba Prefecture in Japan, realizing that he is not his birthplace. Notices that the clothes Epha's wear have a very unusual scent, reminding him of fruits, flowers, incense, and even meat. This makes him feel hungry, and a loud growl comes from his stomach. The woman still pointing the sword doesn't understand and asks what he intends to do. Once again, Asuda's stomach growls and Epha asks if he's joking with her. He tries to explain and says that she smells good, especially since he hasn't eaten anything. And in starving, the boy tries to apologize and says he had no intention of stealing. Eiffel has a strange aura while pointing the sword, and Masuda tries to apologize again, but his growling stomach is getting in the way, and he starts to think this might be the end of his second life. A sword drops to the ground. That IFO starts to tremble, making the boy think she might be feeling unwell. The warning begins to cry, and then burst out laughing. As soon as it is shocked to realize she had been holding back her laughter, but then the warrior says Asuda must be eliminated, and when he asks why, Epha says it's the first time she's gotten nervous and she was born, that's why he must be eliminated. The boy tries to apologize for hurting her pride and says he's in trouble and doesn't know the place. Meanwhile, the Onin thinks that he's neither from the Stone Capital nor in the Western Kingdom. She then says she'll listen to what he has to say and offers to take him to her home, otherwise she will eliminate him. To ask if it's a good idea to invite a stranger. And the woman says that if he doesn't have a fire prepared, he'll die. The boy introduces himself, but Epha has trouble saying his name, so he decides she should just call him a suitor. The woman asks him to lean on her shoulders so they can move quickly. The offer as soon as it puts his arm around her and ends up getting elbowed. The woman says he should only place his hand on her shoulder and asks if he's hiding a sword in his chest. Asuda says he doesn't want to do anything, so she shouldn't worry. But the one-in says that if he does want to try something, he should go ahead. She'll just be faster with the sword. They walk. Ive says they wasted too much time, and that soon a Jiba will attack them during the night. Confused, the boy asks about the Jiba, and she describes all the features of a boar, which she confirms the Jiba. She asked if he saw one, and the boy confirms. That's why he fell into the trap. He realizes the coat he's wearing is made from the animal's hide. Eiffel explains that her tribe hunts the animals, eats their meat, and sells the rest, like hides and horns. She also says that because of what they eat, the people from the Stone City despise the forest folk. The boy asks why, and she says it's because the meat is tough and smells bad, and people who eat it end up smelling like Giva meat. But Asuda says the scent is delicious, and since he has a good nose for these things, he knows the Jiba must be delicious. She just says the meat isn't good, but it's not bad either, and the boy thinks that's a great challenge for cooks. They spot the village, and the woman says they're arriving. Asud asks how many people live in the village, and she explains that their homes stretch from north to south with a maximum of 500 people. She also says that traveling from one city to another takes at least half a day. A man appears and asks Fall who the grumpy little brat with her is. She tells him it's nothing that concerns him. But Deson says that the Sun family are like rulers and asks about the boy's strange clothes and where he came from. But the one who says she doesn't care about the Sun family, he's just a troubled man, and asks him to get out of her way. Irritated, the man demands that she repeat what she said, but she challenges him to a fight. Otherwise, he should disappear. She walks past the man, who yells at her to be careful, hunting gibbous so she doesn't lose her head one day. Asuda comments that he's in no position to say anything, but at least she should get along with the neighbors. Then she explains that one night when her father passed away, the man broke into her house and tried to assault her and to defend herself. She came in with several low blows. She says that ever since then, because of the Sun family hair, she lost her standing with the people and asks a suitor if she really should worry about someone like that. The boy says she should hit him again, but she says he's not worth it and that if any trouble comes up, she'll be the one held responsible. As soon as Stomach growls again and embarrassed, she asks if he's doing it on purpose. To defend himself, the boy says she can laugh and she tells him to shut up. They finally arrived at Epha's small and modest home, and the boy asks if he should take off his shoes. Annoy, she says. She'll make something to eat since his stomach is so loud. Thanks for an ask if she doesn't live with any other family. She reminds him that she told him her father had passed away, and the same had happened to her mother a long time ago. They go inside and the huntress tells him to sit and wait. When Epha takes off her Juba fur coat, the smell of the meat becomes even stronger, making his stomach growl louder. She asked him to hand over the sword, saying it's customary to entrust your weapons when entering someone's home. The boy hesitates since the Santokumaif is the only thing he has in this world. But with no other option, he hands it over and asks her to take good care of it. She says she will and that she's not clumsy. If they made a mistake. He's not saying he's a victim, but he's probably asking if the source is a memento from his father. And Asuda confirms, He explained that the forest dwellers refuse to acknowledge the existence of anyone who mistreats their own family. With a pot in hand, the wound appears, and Asuna walks over curiously. Thinking he's hungry, Face says he'll be ready soon. But the boy says he's actually interested in the local cuisine since his work relates to it. While she cooks, the boy watches curiously, and asks if the amount is for 2 people, and if there's anything special about Cuba meat. Effort tries to understand what he's talking about. He doesn't know anything. He looks at the food with satisfaction and the woman. When irritated, asks what he's laughing at. Trying to apologize, he simply says he was thinking the food looks delicious. And Epha replies that it's just so-so. The one announces that it will take a while to be ready, and that now she wants to hear his story. Removing his scarf and sitting down, he reflects on the 17 years he's lived. He says that at first he thought he was dead and woke up in that place as if nothing had happened, wondering if he'd been taken to a foreign country. Thinking that might be the case, he realized everything was strange. So he asks how he can speak Japanese with her if she doesn't even know what Japan is. Then he asks her to tell him where they are. Eiffel explains that the Forest People's Camp and the Stone City genus are in the territory of the Western Jungle Kingdom, and that there are many people in the Western capital. She also says that the Jungle People worship the god of the Western Jungle, and that there are 4 great kingdoms on the continent of Masakurun, and 4 great gods. The woman says that people without the blessing of the 4 great gods are like beasts, and worried asks the boy how he doesn't know that. Asura says he doesn't know, and the boy also thinks about the strange boar, which doesn't exist in any books, and with all these things. It concludes that this world is not his. Then the boy asks I-5 if she's ever met anyone like him, but the girl says no, thinks he's been sent to another world, and that now he can't see his father, Reina, or deliver the knife. He worries about how long it will take to return to his original world, and wonders if he hit his head really hard and is imagining everything. The boy gets startled when Epha touches him, snapping him out of his thoughts. She stands up and walks over to the fire, saying the meat seems to be ready. He looks like a large pot of stew and is shocked by the amount of, yet still asks a woman if she believes his story. She says she could tell from his eyes that he wasn't lying, and because of that, she thinks he's crazy. Fried chops onions and throws them into the food, and the boy notices the foam increasing. A bit sad, he thanks her for believing him, and the woman finds it strange that he likes being called crazy. In his defense, Asuda says he's happy she believed him even if she thinks he's crazy. Curious, Epha asks what he'll do, and he'll try to return to his world. And the boy says he doesn't know what to do or how to go back. He says he doesn't even know how he came to this world. So if he's a burden, she should say so and he'll leave immediately. The boy even suggests camping, but the woman says if he does that, he'll be killed by a Jiba with only bones left the next day. Epha says she was seen with him by Diz's son, so it's her responsibility. And until he learns about the world and the gods, he should stay near her. With that, she says that after he understands, things can end however he wants. He thanks her for everything, and as a sign of respect, bows his head like in Japan. But the girl finds it strange. Asuda reflects how she let him stay, and was the first person he met since arriving, and he feels happy about that. The food is ready, and Face serves them both. Zuda thanks her and says it smells good. Curiously, the boy observes what's in the stew, and besides the meat, there are onions and potatoes. Grabbing a piece of meat with chopsticks, you taste it, and feeling the flavor, it yells that it's unpleasant. A memory of Asuda's past begins with him gathering herbs. But the scene shifts as his father asks him to help separate some boar meat, noticing his son's curious hesitation. He admitted that he was feeling afraid. The boy felt a sense of accomplishment after successfully preparing the daikon and boar dish. When he asks about the meat, his father explains that it needs to age for a few days before it's ready. Upon finally tasting the stew, he remarked that it was quite delicious. The meat lacked any unpleasant odor, and the man noted that it was also entirely lean. While speaking with a girl, she mentions wanting to eat meat with daikon, leading Asura to promise he'll bring it next time. When he expresses his regret over the situation, she asks if he shares her feelings of sadness. Alternatively, he worried about failing while the man was still asleep. She urged him to wake up, punctuating the command with a punch. He vowed to earn his meals rather than simply eating for free. She served him dried Jiba meat for his morning meal. He explained that they would depart the moment he finished his task. He struggled to stomach the meat, finding the scent repulsive and suspecting that it hadn't been bled properly. As he ate, an irritated observer kept a close watch on him. The boy found himself reminiscing about the food and meat he had consumed the previous day. The meal was incredibly tough and fatty with a notably sticky consistency, while the onions mimicked the distinct texture of those found in sukiyaki. The potatoes had a watery, flour-like consistency, seasoned only with the sharp taste of black pepper. Upon tasting the food, you find that both the flavor and aroma are quite pleasant this time. Clearly annoyed, Epha questioned whether he was finished yet, while the boys struggled to make any progress with their meat. Once he finishes eating, she explains that they will be gathering piko leaves and firewood until sunset, prompting the boy to ask about his santoka knife. They headed toward a storage building to retrieve the knife. Suda was immediately struck by the rich, aromatic scent of spices. He picked up a unique item he had uncovered while searching. After finding the knife, Eiffel urged the group to move out, noting that they had already lost too much time. She questioned why he was fixated on the storage area, prompting the boy to explain that he was the son of a cook. He reflected on how the girl seemed largely indifferent to the flavor of her food. To show his appreciation for their hospitality, Asuda offered to prepare the evening meal. Baffled by the situation, Eiffel questioned the man's intelligence, noting that even a child possesses basic cooking skills. He defended himself by explaining that the food in this world was quite different from what he was used to back home. She voiced her skepticism, noting that the situation didn't make any sense. However, the boy simply asks her to try his recipe, suggesting that even a small amount might be of some help. Finding nothing more to say, she simply agreed and began to share the details. He was granted the freedom to act exactly as he wished. For the time being, the boy was content with the fact that he could at least handle the cooking. The other face remarked on the boy's audacity, warning that his childish behavior would lead to serious repercussions. Filled with concern, he rushed over to her side. As they continued walking, he asked her to clarify what she meant by that. As it moved through the woods, it immediately took notice of something. Despite the presence of the leaves, the woman spoke up to share her perspective, that although they look similar, piko leaves are found along the riverbank. Curious, the boy asks if the dried leaf was what gave the flavor of black pepper, and she confirms, saying she uses it to preserve meat for a month. To try to pick some leaves, but Ifuss stops him and tells him not to touch, since stealing from the Morgan Mountain is taboo. Explains that it's forbidden to pick leaves that Jibas don't eat, and that the mountain and forest are territories of the Western Jungle Kingdom. Eiffel also says that the Morian people are refugees from the Southern Kingdom, and are allowed to hunt gibbous, which is why they are known as Jiba eaters. With that, Asuna understands that they can only eat animals considered pests. Continuing on, Ifa says that if they'd break the rules, their punishment is to have their skin stripped off. They reach the river and the boys can plants when the woman, removing her coat, announces that she'll be a first. She says her body reeks of Jiba fat and tosses her coat to the embarrassed boy. With no clothes covering her body, Ifa says that it's taboo to at an unmarried woman when she's undressed. Amazed, the boy asks if that means it's okay to look if the woman is married. Ifrit just asks him to keep watch while she bathes and tells him not to look at her. The boy just thinks there's no way he could peek with a heavy s, and the huge bouldered from his eyes. "Sub me," the girl screams, and worry he runs to her, asking what happened and saying that if that point, it's impossible not to look. He can't see the girl and asks if she's drowning, warning her that he's going in after her. Ifrit surfaces and yells for him math to end. A giant python is to try to help you. Lets the snake wrap its tail around his arm despite the pain. He shots to Ifile, and he's going through the beast toward the shore and tells her to prepare for impact. Using his strength, he pulls the python, causing it to release the girl. Suda manages to get her out of the water and takes her to the shore. Worry that Epha might have broken a bone. The python, meanwhile, slithered back to the depths of the water. He asks if she's okay, and Ifri responds that she only swallowed a bit of water. As soon as it gets embarrassed, looking at the exposed part of his body and realizes he can't take his eyes off, afraid of what she might do. Panicking, the boy covers his eyes with his hands and says he didn't see anything. Suddenly, everything goes dark, and hearing Aoife's voice, the girl asks if he's alive and tells him to come out. There's a dead Jiba on the ground, and the girl holding a knife says the beast snuck up behind him, and then you must never let his guard down. Without taking his eyes off her, he agrees, and an only face says that normally his eyes would be ripped out for looking at a maiden. But since he saved her life, she'll let it go and thanks him for saving her. He also thanks her for saving his life and then asks what they'll do with the animal. With her knife, she says she needs to butcher it. Suggests they let all the red liquid drain from the body. She doesn't understand, and Asu explains that the meat smells bad because of that liquid in it. Anyway, they only need the leg for now. Asking for the knife, the boy makes it cut near the heart, and then the liquid begins to flow out. He celebrates his success. Without much enthusiasm, Ife says they only need the hind legs, teeth, and tusks, and the boy says that's a waste. Asura explains that his way means being grateful for the life he takes, and he removes all the internal parts, starting with the smaller ones, and when he finishes, everything, the boy asks if they can take it all home. They tied the animal in, carry it together. As they walk, he asks if the Giba's hide can be used for other things. Calling him an idiot, Ifre says that sewing is only for women, but the tusks can be used to trade with them. Not understanding, he talks about women going hunting and the girl says that's not their duty. When questioned for saying that, despite being a female hunter, Eiffel explains that because she became the head of the Fat Clan, she had to learn from her father. This revelation sparks an argument between the two, and Asuna ends up letting slip a comment about Epha's body. She tries to ask what he meant by keep it in your heart, and depending on what it is, she'll consider a fair punishment. At home, the boy collapses to the ground in exhaustion, lamenting that they couldn't get any pico leaves. Eiffel says he's as weak as a woman with an evil laugh. He tells the girl that from now on, this is for training stage, and that they'll begin butchering the Jiba. Asuda says he's already prepared everything, with the animal on the table and the knives in place for skinning and cutting. Seeing that Epha wasn't too enthusiastic, he asks her to show a bit of interest and says things are about to get exciting. With a piece of meat in a hand, he tells her she needs to know how to use the knife to remove the fat. Then he finds it strange that the girl is very quiet. It asks if she's dozing off. Finally opening her eyes, she yells that she wasn't dozing off. As he brings the meat to the fire, he briefly thinks the girl looked pretty in that moment. He refocuses on his work. Even though he's tired and thinking of taking a nap, the boat is determined to keep cutting the meat, not wanting to leave a single piece out. Continuing his task, he keeps teaching Ifa how to handle the knife for a proper cut. He's reaching his limit and feels that the girl's clothing isn't helping much. Asuda now teaches how to clean the bones, and she complains, saying she should cut his back instead. Focused on the food, all for his passion for cooking. The boy collapses to the floor from exhaustion once the preparations are finished. Poking him with her foot, Epha asks why the boy is sleeping, and he says he's not. Serious, she says. She saw him sleeping with her own eyes and embarrassed. The boy asks if he really dozed off. Handing him the seasonings, she asks him to use the crushed pico leaves so the meat doesn't go to waste. He agrees, saying they had a lot of trouble gathering them, and she complains about him falling asleep. Holding back the comment, the boy thinks it was she who was dozing off. Asuda accounts for the vegetables. 4 poisons in 5 areas, and before cooking, he asks if that's for a small portion. Shocked, I have to ask if he thinks meat alone is enough to keep the body healthy. William questions his surprise expression. That's when the boy realizes that maybe there's a concept of nutrition in this world involving proteins and other things. So he says that cooking Jiba meat is now his priority, and with he starts cutting, remembering his father. Asuda asks if she is othering ingredients, and she says she has fruit wine and salt. He asks for the salt, but she says it's only for making dried meat. She also says that the ingredients she gave him are enough to prevent diseases. The boy realizes she's getting irritated. But even so, Ifa brings in what he asked for. She hands him a blue stone, and he quickly realizes it's mineral salt. Ifo explains that a complete set of Jiba tusks can be traded for that salt, and warns him not to waste it. With that, Asuna understands that's why she's angry. And as he scrapes the salt, he considers drinking a bit of the wine. But the girl is too fast and drinks the wine first. Concerned, he asked why she's drinking like that, and the girl replies that, since she's 17, she can do whatever she wants. Asuda thinks that maybe the way they calculate age in this world is different. Almost shouting, the boy says that she's the same age as him, but she doesn't seem to care much about it. Then he goes back to cooking, adding fat, salt. He tries to remove it so it doesn't end up like last night's stew. I first shows up with more firewood, but the boy stops her and says it's not time to increase the heat. In her defense, she says the meat is to cook a lot to be edible and understanding. The boy asks for it to cook over low heat. He starts adding other ingredients, and gets confused by the vegetable that looks like a potato. So the girl says it's called poitin. Asuda mutters that the girl is always giving her opinion, and it's because he doesn't know anything. Once again, Ife says the stew needs 2 poitons, 3 areas, and a bit of pico leaf, just enough to give energy for a whole day, according to the villager's experience. Complaining, the boy says, it's no different from chanko, the Japanese stew usually eaten by sumo wrestlers. Ife says she's getting hungry, and the boy replies that the food will be ready soon. Returning to stir the pot, he says he's going to skin the foam, which startles the girl, and she asks why he has to do that. Explaining, the boy says it will only take an hour to do that and add the final touches, leaving Eiffel shocked by how much time it takes. Eiffel says he's taking too long to cook, and he apologizes for it. But she says it's her fault for letting him cook without knowing what he was going to do. The girl froze herself to the ground in hunger, and, concerned, Asura asks how hungry she is, assuring her it'll all be ready soon. Declaring he'll make a great meal, boy adds a little peacock leaf and He announces that the cube of soup is ready and apologizes for making her wait so long. Surprised by the soup, she asked why he didn't add pointin, but he assures her it's very good. Sells the two sit on the floor, and cheerfully, Asuda eats the soup, realizing that the ingredients gave the meat a nice flavor. He tries the meat and notices it's tender, and also thinks the area has turned out well. Eiffel serves herself again, but Asuda gets worried because she hasn't looked at him even once. He asked what she thought of the soup, but the girl says it doesn't make sense. especially cooking for so long. The huntress says that to her, thing necessary for survival, but then she surprises him by saying it's clearly the taste of a delicious meal. Satisfied, the girl said, it said that food should make a person happy, and that she could feel his passion for cooking. She ends by saying that all the effort he put into preparing the meal wasn't a waste. I feel so she doesn't know how to say it, but that he's right, the food is delicious, and asks him not to make that face. Suddenly the boy starts to cry. He thanks her and thinks that he wants to be known and have his existence accepted, and that the feeling in his chest is happiness. Over the 4 days that passed, Asuna had a problem with the poisons, not knowing what to do with him. He picked herbs and gathered logs then asked Epha for permission to use the poitons. Using 1 poiton per day in the stew made it mushy. Boiling it made it fall apart, and frying it in fat turned it into flurry lard. Even eating it raw didn't work. It was too tough. He yells, asking what to do with them, is suddenly smacked by Epha, who tells him to speak more quietly. Why, if it goes out hunting, he stays home cooking. Asura apologizes, and she says she has something for him. She hands him clothes and a dagger, saying she's lending him a few keepsakes from her father. Since it's something important, Asuna asks if it's really okay for her to lend them, and she says it'll help keep people from laughing at M when they cross the river. She says if he wears white clothes, he'll have to stay outside. But he replies that without spare clothes, he'll be naked while he's dry. But he thanks her and says he'll use them carefully, and Ifrat tells him not to do anything stupid like walking around without clothes. Then she asked if he found a way to cook the poisons. Asuda says he hasn't figured it out yet and think about reducing the poitons. Once again, when talking about how to eat Juba meat, Ifra says it's a way to avoid getting sick. So the boy notes that she must be healthy because of her meals. Asuda thinks about the amount of nutrients one should eat, and the 3 essential nutrients, amino acids, vitamins, and minerals. With that, he realizes a connection and pretends that these regions are layered like onions, yet a single crucial ingredient remains missing. Intrigued, she asked what he had discovered, but the reality was far from straightforward. Sue pulled the girl into a firm embrace. He mentioned that, thanks to Ifa's help, he had finally discovered the answer. Ultimately, the boy arrived at a definitive conclusion. He recognized that the girl viewed poitum as more than just a grain, seeing it as a vital source of carbohydrates essential for survival. But when he finally took a bite, he found that it tasted exactly like flour. Based on his intuition, he decides to put his theory to the test. With his plan in place, he begins crafting a dish using potent ingredients, aiming to transform the meal into something entirely new. Ultimately, it shriveled into a dried flour. The boy began contemplating the most effective way to handle the preparation. He then proceeded to cook it in a small amount of water. The process continues until it is eventually reduced to a paste. Afterward, he set it out in the sunlight to dry. After an hour had passed, the dough was completely ready. Noticing the texture was dry and solid, he decided to grind it into a fine flour. Asura then ignited the fire and added the flour to the flames. He reasoned that if the plan actually worked, it would change everything. The substance was intended to take on a sticky consistency. He stirred the pan carefully, waiting for the mixture to finally reach a sticky consistency. He pondered whether Epha would be open to him trying a different approach. He approached her and shared his plan to create a brand new dish. She simply replied that he was free to do as he pleased. As Epha shifted her posture while lying down, Asuna grew concerned that she was on the verge of losing her temper. With a smile, he explained that he was trying on her father's borrowed shirt and asked for her opinion on how it looked. She bluntly remarks that it looks terrible. Feeling discouraged, Asuda realizes that communication is impossible in his current state, so he simply mentions that he's heading back to finish the cooking. While gathering the ingredients, he noted that pico leaves were capable of keeping meat fresh for up to 5 days. He prepared the juba meat along with an assortment of other vegetables. The boy leveraged this information to his advantage. He scorched the surrounding area and waited for the right moment to proceed. He blended the ingredients into the meat before finishing it off with a light sprinkle. He used a small amount of mineral salt. In the meantime, Epha remained on the ground, still making no attempt to get up. The next phase of the operation involves the point and extract method. She poured the liquid over him to trigger the intended effect. He struggled to maintain order and keep the situation from falling apart. To regulate the temperature, the boy took small portions and tossed them back. He passed the object back and forth between his hands. The battered portions were then tossed into the pan. He continued with the frying, waiting for the perfect moment to take action. He then added the chopped ingredients along with the fruit wine. Approaching the final steps of his recipe, the boy covered the fried patties to begin the smoking process. Ifra's sudden appearance caught the boy off guard, and when he questioned her presence, the huntress reminded him that she could go wherever she pleased in her own home. Asuda began to consider that she might actually find the whole situation quite interesting. Returning to the preparation, he began transferring the finished patties into a bowl. With both of his hands currently occupied, he asked the girl to hold the item for him. The hands prove to be another major problem. He adds more ingredients to the pan, incorporating them into the mixture of meat juices, fat, and fruit wine. He begins to stir the ingredients, noting his intention to pour an extra layer of sauce over the entire dish. It then requested that she bring the bowls a little closer. Asuda finished the dish by pouring the sauce over the top. He announced that the Jiba burger was finally ready. After mentioning the potions, he stepped out, leaving everyone behind completely confused. He returned with a prepared dose and presented it to her, leaving the girl even more bewildered than before. The boy explained that by toasting a mixture of flour and water, he had created a dish remarkably similar to okonomiyaki. He noted that they should eat quickly while the flavor was still at its peak. Having finished his prayer, he announced that it was finally time to eat. He found the entire situation, along with the boy, to be quite strange. The boy got the sense that she was muttering something under her breath. Asuda pointed out that this specific type of bread was completely flavorless, and that she should mix a piece with the meat. The young man finds the sauce amazing. The sweetness of the fat, the flavor of the meat, and the strong smell of fruit wine are delicious. Satisfied with his creation, he decides to name it Jiba Burger. He says the best part was toasting the puiton, which used to be very hard to eat, and he smiles very pleased with his dish. The knifer asked what he's laughing about, and the boy realizes he's screwed up by not paying attention to her. As soon as she asked her what she thought of the meal, the boy notices that the meat and puiton are disappearing quickly. Meanwhile, sitting down, Epha chews the food and after swallowing says it's delicious. Asuda is happy with the answer, but asks her to elaborate more. Warren gets him no along with a slap. Kneeling, the boy is confused by her reaction and says that if it's because of the hug, he's truly sorry. But Ife simply replies that he talks too much, and if she doesn't want to say more, he should accept it. This leaves the boy even more confused, and she turns her back to him, asking him not to look at her. So Asura accepts that her saying it's delicious means it really is. A little burro opens the door, asking what they're eating. She says she smelled a wonderful scent of meat, and wants to know what the white thing is. Epha tells Rimi Rube to get out of her house and says she warned her not to come over anymore. Van Asuda realizes that the two of them know each other. Still, the entrance of the house. The girl says it's been so long since they last met, and yet Epha is already bullying her, bombarding them with questions. Rimi wants to know what they ate, who cooked, and even asks if Asuda is her husband. But Epha says she would never marry a pale man. Asuna wants to know who the girl is, and the child replies that she is Rimi Ru, the youngest daughter of the Ru clan, and a friend of Ife. She hates noisy kids like her and tells her to go back home. The girl starts to cry and worried. Asuda asks why she would say something like that to a child. To stop the crying, she says she was only joking, and that she said it because the Sun clan hates her. So it would be better for the Ru clan to stay away from her. She also says it would be a problem if Rimi were crying outside and asked her to come in. Now smiling, the girl sits between them and says the Sun clan isn't that scary, and that it was her father who said so. But Eiffel says it's not good for a leader to have that kind of attitude. And all their talk leaves us pseudo-confused. Rooney calls the boy and asks if he knew that a suspicious guy entered the Felklin, and because of that, she was forbidden from going to IFA's house until they found out who he was. Asura says she's already sitting next to the suspicious guy. And in her defense, Rini says that since he's wearing Garufa's clothes, she doesn't think he's strange. She also says she really likes Ifa and Garufa, which is why she always visits them. And as soon as she understands that's the name of the huntress's father. The little girl also says that when a clan's clothes are given to someone, that person is accepted by the clan, and she asks once more if he is an Ife's husband. Annoying, the woman says the boy doesn't stand a chance with her, and that she only lent him a change of clothes. Asuda thinks the way she said it is harsh, and wonders if he should just swallow his sadness. Curious, Remy looks at the food, and asks what it tastes like. He explains what each thing is, and excited the girl asks to eat some, where the spoonie feeds the girl, saying she might be surprised. He also asked I5 if this is forbidden, and she confirms it is. Imagine he's already committed more crimes that would get him arrested in Japan. Asuda keeps feeding the girl, wanting to know what she thinks. Very pleased, Rooney says everything is delicious and asks if it's really Juba meat and how you made it so tasty and tender. The girl grabs a suit of shirt and shakes it while asking more questions, and the boy is impressed by her strength. But stopping her, Eiffel says food is only meant to help them get through the day, and asks if she hasn't learned that it's forbidden to want more than that. The girl apologizes and now free. Asuda thanks her for helping and also apologizes for what happened. The huntress says it's going to get dark, and if the girl has nothing else to say, then she should head home. Rumi thanks then for the delicious food introduced herself to the boy and asks his name. On her knees and crying, the girl begs him to lend his strength and teach her how to make the meal to help the clan leader Jibiru, who might pass away. Now I'm very pleased Epha asks Asuda if he's really going to the Ru clan and he firms saying that leader Jiba is someone geared her. Determined, he says that if he can save someone with his own hands, then he will. The day before, the boy tells Remy he doesn't know her grandmother's condition, but asks if she could come when the food is ready. But Eiffel explains that when a firekeeper from another clan cooks, it's customary for them to use the stove of that clan. Asuda understands that this is so they can keep watch while the person cooks. So you ask Rimuru to come and get them when she can, and smiling the girl thanks him for agreeing to it. Looking at iPhone, worried, Asuda says she seems a little sad. She says that Grandma Jiba is someone precious to her, and that she also wants to help Remy. But even so, she wanted to refuse the request. The boy asked why she didn't say so earlier, and that even though he felt the mood shift, he couldn't bring himself to say no. A bit uncertain, Ifei says that 2 years ago, after her fight with Diga's son, leader Donna Ru proposed that she marry the head woman of the Ru Fa family. But since she wanted the life of a hunter, she rejected the proposal. The whole confession makes Asuda a little nervous. Continuing, she says that Donna was smiling because they planned to eliminate the Son clan through the arranged marriage since the two groups hated each other. This makes Asuda irritated by their idea and by how they didn't respect the girl's freedom. Ifriz says that because of that, she prefers to keep her distance from the clan. But unfortunately, they have a huge amount of land in the forest. Crying, she says that if he gets involved with a Ru clan, you might end up getting caught in a conflict with the Sun clan. To comfort her, Asura says you might not understand their customs from the clans, but he doesn't want the gorilla to be so sad. He says he only wants to see the smile of his savior, and the girl makes an effort to smile a little. On the present day, Rimuru arrives very early, and still apologizes for making him wait. But Asura asks her not to be so serious, and says he was there as promised. Packing things into a cloth bundle, he says there are many preparations to be made. Walking through the village, the boy notices that the houses are very different from Ifaz. Rivia explains them there are 13 family members, but since there's a baby, they'll only be cooking for 12. Worried, the boy says he was told he'd be using the clan's utensils, but wants to know if there's enough for 12 people. The girdle says yes and asked, I fell for her knife. As soon as it asks, it's okay to hand it over. And Remy says he'll do it too, as it's a custom to entrust blades to another clan. The boy remembers Epha had said that and feels reassured that at least it's only while he's preparing everything. Then Ruby announces that she brought guests, Epha from the Falkland and Asuda. Everyone from the clan comes out of the houses, and the surprise is the boy, while the huntress says the only woman in the family she knew was Remy. The girl introduces Tiedemann, wife of the former chief, her grandmother Vina Ru, and a young woman named Rana. The name catches the boy's attention, reminding him of the Reina from his world, and how he didn't keep his promise to make hot pot with Borfer. He also thinks of his father and how he left him alone, feeling, and led a terrible son. Noticing he seems off, Ranaru asks if he's okay, and the boy explains that he knows someone with the same name. The girl says he looks sad and asks if something's wrong, and wiping away his tears, Asuda says no. Ruby introduces the whole clan, and the boy realizes he didn't catch the names of the others. Ifet introduces herself and says, is suited. Is one of hers, at least for that day. Smiling, the boy says he was invited by the girl and will be borrowing the clan's stove. The clan's grandmother welcomes them and says that she, Remy, and Rana will help. She also asks if the boy was born abroad. Seeming interested, Vina asks if he was born outside, and if there's a reason he doesn't want to say where he's from. The boy says he was born in Japan, had never heard of a continent called Amsterhorn before. Though it's hard to understand, he wasn't born here. Vina becomes curious about a foreigner who doesn't know the place and ended up in this continent. Soon Remy appears excited and calls Asuda over to show the stove. He's impressed by the stoves, one for cooking meat and the other for boiling. The boy is satisfied with the stove he'll be using. Reina shows up and asks how he's going to make soft Juba meat if he's not going to boil it, and whether he brought something different with the meat. The pseudo-fiends are pretty sharp with the questions, but she says they could have provided the meat, but she heard he said it would be done his way. But the boy gets distracted. The necklace on her neck and notices everyone has 3 tusks. He asks if a few are traded for food. The girl explains it's a charm given by women as a kind of blessing for good health. Benasuda realizes it's not just used as currency and that they can make various accessories, which is different from the Fat clan that hunts every 5 days. He looks at Ifa, who seems irritated, while Remy comes in with the poisons. The clan's grandmother asks the huntress if she was the one who caught the Jiba. Without much interest, she confirms, and Titanum says it's hard to believe a woman could hunt that animal. Then the girl explains that she was taught by her father, and because of that, she knows how to live alone in the forest. The elder woman asks if she intends to die alone, and Epha even tries to answer. But the woman says that at this rate the Faklan will end and asks if she doesn't want children. Eiffel watches the two cooking, with Remy asking if the amount of water for the poitons is correct. Asuda explains that it's necessary to make them like the ones she The more is whether Ife's still in a bad mood and looking at the girl. He notices something odd about her. Then he becomes curious if she had been talking to someone earlier. He goes to Reina, who's cooking the and she says that if they're boiled too much, they turn into mush and Grandma Gibbo won't be able to eat them. Asura asks if she's tried cooking the puttons before, and she says yes for her grandmother, but she got scolded by the family. The boy says that after the poisons, he'll prepare the meat, and Rimi looks a little startled, saying she's never seen meat cooked that way. The yum cook says he took it from the area between the Gibba's back and shoulders. Tiananmen says they only eat the hindquarters of Jebus, and the boy says I've told him the same, and he wonders how that's supposed to feed an entire family. Then the elder explains that the men hunt 2 Gibbas per day and throw the rest into the ravine so the forest dwellers won't eat it. She says there's a mutt nest in the ravine that returns the soul of the Jibos to the forest. Hearing that, the boy asks if it's really necessary to throw the entire remainder into the forest, and the elder says it prevents the weak from finding it because they believe it could lead to giving birth to someone without honor if they ate it. The boy thinks that's just another overly strict tradition, with the dried point in dough ready. Asuda says the next step is to cut everything into little pieces. Remy thinks it's fun, and when she tries to cut another dried poitan, the suitor takes it from her hand and says it'll be used for something else, and that he needs to prepare the areas. He says he needs a lot more and asks the girl to take him to the storage shed. Then looking at Ifa, he asked if she's going to help carry things. Entering the storage, the boy is surprised by the amount of supplies calling in a food treasure trove. Rain hands over the areas and offers another ingredient, but the boy declines, saying he doesn't have time to learn how to use it. Ifrez seems curious and looks around every corner of the storage, and when Asut imagines she must understand how he felt seeing it all. With everything they need, Asuda says they should head back. A voice yells, asking who left a Jiba in the middle of the path, and I felt it looks uneasy. He really greets her father, Donda, and says he arrived early that day, and the boy realizes this is the man who proposed marriage to Ifei. Very irritated, the man asks Asuda if he's the foreigner staying with the Fa clan, saying he's even weaker and paler than he heard. Even scared, realized this is the guy who hurried far in the booth. The man says that Ifav, besides dishonoring the Ru clan, now comes to his doorstep with an outsider. Angrily, Donna asks the girl if she wants to stay in the clan's honor even further. In their defense, he tells the man that she had explained they were cooking for Grandma Juba, and that he had agreed. She then asks if he doesn't want to help the elder. The man agrees, saying they are Jiba eaters, and if they fail, it won't be able to stay well. A boy calls for Remy and says that just because their father is tolerant doesn't mean he accepts everything. But the girl tells Ruto to shut up. Then Asuda confirms what the girl said. And then he's there to save Jibiru as the firekeeper of the Fat clan. Don thus simply tells him to do as he pleases. Head held high, Asuda finishes his preparations, then asks for the food to be served. Though confident in front of the leader, the boy is a bit scared and can't bring himself to look eye-fast. Reina announces that everyone gather has been served, and Asuda thanks her, saying he'll join them shortly. Asuda walks toward the group and trusts them. His fate to the wind. He meets Jibber Ru, a very frail and wrinkled old woman. The members of the Ru clan make a gesture unfamiliar to Aswade, and speak of blessings from the forest and thank the firekeeper for their vitality. Surprised, he remembers I for doing the same and thinks maybe he didn't care it then, but Asat, she must have been giving thanks in the same way. With that, the boy thinks that despite being different from him, these people are still human, and that despite their customs, they surely want to protect their families. With the dish in hand, Rima offers her grandmother the food made with juba meat, using a spoon to bring a bit to the elderly woman's mouth. Jibiru chews a little and stays silent, worrying Asuda and Rima, who asks what happened. Shana dismissed it as nothing more than a repulsive heap of meat, describing it as completely inedible. The elderly man was visibly trembling. Despite her attempts to stand, her granddaughter pleads with her to remain still and avoid overexerting herself. This only intensified Donda's complaints, as she pointed out that the old woman was also frustrated with the firekeeper. To everyone's surprise, Graham suddenly rose to his feet. Majibus remarks that the man still behaves like a child, acting as though nothing has changed. She made that statement for that reason alone. He understood that his personal dislikes shouldn't dictate the opinions of everyone else. As he continues to behave like a child, the granddaughter urges the elderly woman to sit down slowly, prompting her to apologize for acting in a way that doesn't suit her age. She summoned Suda, who introduced himself and suggested they speak after the meal, an offer the boy accepted. Rana remained attentive as she continued to feed her grandmother. Juba Ru explained that, thanks to the current circumstances, they were finally making progress. She recalled a time from the past, before they were considered human. This dates back to the time they spent living in the southern jungle. She explained that they once lived on a diet of fruit and lizards, but the war forced them west after the forests were burned to the ground. Deprived of the mountain's resources, many fell victim to the gibbous, and even when they managed to hunt one, The meat proved to be inedible. Grandma Juba recalled how tough and foul the creatures were, expressing her dread at the thought of having to continue eating them. She believed it would be better if they were wiped out entirely. Deeply grateful, she thanked the boy for reminding her of the simple pleasure of eating, though she couldn't help but feel a bit bashful. The boy clarified that his only involvement was teaching the others how to prepare it. In response, she presented her necklace to the young man, granting him her blessing. It was a highly valued treasure bestowed upon him by his clan. Epha whispered to him, suggesting he accept the offer as a well-earned reward for his hard work. Each member of the family also offered their individual blessing. This left the boy's hands overflowing with necklaces crafted from Jiba tusks. Donda cautioned him against letting the praise go to his head, as he remained completely indifferent to the opinions of others. From his perspective, the boy had forced him to ingest the poison. Anxiously, the boy asked if the entire endeavor had ended in failure. Expecting the worst after his failure, he asks about the punishment he'll have to face. But Epha calmly advises him to ignore the threat since he has already been blessed. She appeared to be on the verge of speaking. Jimaru calls out to her, remarking on how much she has grown while beckoning her to come closer. As she touched her face, the woman began to describe the girl's recent condition. She grew into a striking beauty, bearing a remarkable resemblance to her mother. With tears welling in her eyes, she confessed to having neglected her for a long time. Jubaru reassured them, insisting that there would be plenty of time for their conversation later. Asuda felt satisfied with their talk, and noting the late hour, Ruto invited them to stay the night. Outside, the young man searched for his assigned cabin, but found it difficult to distinguish between the identical buildings. Reflecting on Epha's composed nature, he looked at his small bag of food and felt a genuine sense of contentment. Acknowledging that everyone has different tastes, he still felt a sense of embarrassment as an apprentice chef, unable to forget Dondas's harsh claim that his cooking was poison. Without warning, the boy was suddenly jolted by surprise. Their complexion paled even further. Venus suddenly appears and questions his suspicious behavior, and though he stammers out a weak denial, she follows up by suggesting they find a place to speak privately. The boy was left puzzled, but she insisted that this was a conversation meant only for his ears. Yasuda found the situation peculiar, and while he didn't think she was a bad person, he was still nervous about how their conversation would go. She leaned in close to the foreigner, whispering something quietly into his ear. Gina questioned whether he was truly unaware of what life was like beyond the forest's borders. Along with the vast world that lay beyond, beads of sweat began to form as the boy grew increasingly anxious. She advised him to relax his expression, reminding him that their situation remained a secret. She explained that while the time wasn't right just yet, she hoped he would remember her when the moment finally arrived. After she departed, the boy was left to reflect on the outside world Vina had mentioned, wondering about a place far beyond the forest that was clearly not his original home. Startled by iPhone's sudden appearance, the boy asked if she had finished her conversation, while she demanded to know what he was doing there. He explained that the identical appearance of the houses had caused him to lose his way. Obviously, she says that if they told him to use a house without a resident, he just had to look for one without a light. Give him an awkward smile, he says it's true. And as they leave, he whispers about being eliminated in a locked room. In the morning, I finish ready for the day and tells Asuvik it's time for them to go hunting, and his only response is to ask when he fell asleep. Concerned, the girl asks if he's feeling sick. He says he's fine, and the huntress tells him not to push himself since he's done so much. She also says she still needs to properly express her gratitude. Falling to the ground, the boy says she's being an angel, and it felt like he was being called to heaven. Eiffel calls out to him, and he replies, it's just insomnia. Asuda thinks about the night when he couldn't stop feeling anxious, while I first seemed fine. All because of Donda saying his food was poison. He thinks about the possibilities, trying to understand since he used only ingredients they themselves used. The boy thinks there's no point in worrying since he fulfilled Rumi's request, and help resolve some of Ayafi's problems. Frustrated, Yersh refuses to accept it, remembering he's the son of the firekeeper chief of the Falkland, and more. More than that, he loves to cook. He understands not everyone will like a dish. And that's okay, but the Domedo went too far by saying it's poison, trying to figure out what to do, the boys. He stays exhausted on the ground, unable to get anywhere. Ifra tells him to rest a bit while she discusses a few things with people from the Ru clan. But Asuda thinks getting out for a while might help. So he goes with the huntress. He hears the men's voices and wonders if they're going out to hunt. He also remembers they didn't give him any blessings and grows curious about why. Ruto calls him, startling him, and he remembers he did receive a blessing from him. The young hunter asks if he's looking for the women, and sheepishly, Asuda says yes. Ruto explains that the women went out to bathe. Asuda asks him to repeat, and is shocked by the confirmation. Then Ruto asks if he doesn't know where that is and offers to take him to them. That leaves Asuda panicking, denying it times while imagining parts of his body being torn off. and Epha agreeing because he broke a taboo. But Ruto grabs him by the shirt and drags him along. Even in full panic, the young hunter asks why he's so shy. When they arrive, the young hunter says the bathing spot is behind the gate and gives him a few pats on the back, causing the boy to fall inside. Upon seeing the girls while they're bathing, Asuna collapses to the ground and faints. Epha shows up complaining that the girls said they wouldn't go take a bath, and then she sees Asuda lying on the ground. Rana says something is wrong with him, and the huntress asks them not to get too close so she can do something to help. They're worried calling his name in Venus as the member of his clan is concerned. To hear his heartbeat, I've a position where the upper part of her body ends up on top of Asu's face. Still weak, he tries to figure out what the soft flesh touching him is. Feeling suffocated, he opens his eyes, and Epha asks if he's okay. His response is to say it's a very different way for her to wake someone up, and as a result, the girl kicks him. Later, I felt apologizes for the kick, and he says it's okay. Another awkward moment came when they discovered he was a boy, since people his age thought he was a girl, something common for firekeepers. That's why Ruto took him to where the girls were bathing, and because of that, there was no chance to ask about the poison again. So, shyly asked, I thought if she wants dinner, and she agrees as he says that's all she ever wants to eat, and even compares the soft meat to the one he felt on his face that morning. Laughing at that, the boy is called stupid by her, but he can only think they're soft. That makes him regret fainting and not being able to touch when he felt an unknown wave of anxiety from the softness. So he thanks her for many things and determined, sir, to let him have another chance to cook his food for Donda. For that, he says he needs to borrow her strength as a clan leader. Since he helped last time as a group leader, Epha says it's her duty to return the favor and asks if he's certain of his victory. And very confident in his victory, he said she doesn't even need to worry. Going to the leader of the Ru clan, the girl says she humbly asks a favor and asks if you will listen. He agrees, and then I face as she would like the fairkeeper of her clan to prepare another meal for the Ru family. Laughing, the man says she must be joking. By facing him as soon as possible, says he's serious. Being arrogant, Damas says the boy confuses courage with stupidity. But out of respect, he will prepare the next stage in 3 days. At her home, my foe explains that according to Donda's orders, he will be the firekeeper in 3 days for the wedding and the routine clan. She explains that everything will be even more strict as you will be serving at the wedding reception. That will unite the Root clan with the Written clan, and if he fails, the Ru family will turn against them and completely isolate the Fair clan. This makes the boy think his actions ended up involving the girl in this, but even so, she gave him permission for the challenge. Then the boy gets excited and says that he absolutely has to win, and making the girl doubt him and ask if he hadn't already said that. But Navi speaks firmly and together the two do a sort of high five. While walking, Asuna thinks about what he can do, since the accusation of poison came because of the soft meat. With the ingredients he's bringing, the boy hopes he can manage. Ifac tells him that Rimi spoke with the women of the clan, just like he had asked, and suddenly the girl appears. Smiling, the little girl says she managed to gather the 4 available women. Reina and Vina are willing to help him and ask what they can do. The boy thanks them all for coming, but he says that this time the best way they can help is by doing nothing, leaving them confused. Inside a house and talk about one of their weddings approaching, and Dan, as the Ru clan, will host a banquet. The man asks Gadrian what's wrong, and the young man says that the people who are about to unite are very different. I thought in a suit of PR-coach, and the girl introduces them, saying they are the ones who will assist the Ru clan. They're looking quite alarmed. The man says he doesn't care who they are, but just hopes the wedding banquet for his son won't be ruined. Being more relaxed, Gajaran says they're grateful for the help, and that his father's words are quite exaggerated. Respectfully, the groom asks that the celebration banquet be enjoyable for everyone. The suit it tells I found that I was start the banquet preparations, and smiling, she says she's really looking forward to the cooking, with everything on the table. Vina curiously asks if he brought 3 types of meat, and Rina asks if he's making burgers again. But the boy denies it and says he'll make something different. Asuda says he's thinking of using the 3 types of meat separately, and the girls are surprised and interested to understand how it will turn out. A large bonfire has been made where the banquet will take place, and Asud is curious about how they managed to build it. But Eiffel pulls him aside, warning that the guests of honor are arriving. The bride and groom are Gazarin, Rutim, and Almamin, while thinking about the young man's kindness. Eifor warns him that he's staring too much at the bride. The leaders of the 2 clans appear, and Dan Rutim is excited about the food being served. The bride's father, Inspector, the food seeming enthusiastic about it, roasted meat, and says a wedding banquet should be at this level. But then the man's expression changes, and he says it looks different. Irritated, the man yells, asking if it's not the disgusting meat they throw to the munt, and if they're saying his son is no different from those creatures. Dan asks who brought the meat, and Nasuda steps up to say he did. The man says that even knowing how important the Beckwood is, he brought that meat and that he won't let it slide. But the boy only asks him to try a little bit. That makes the man even more furious, and he grabs the boy by the collar. To explain, Masuda says he understands where the anger comes from, but that he thought of the dish because Gajarin asked for something everyone could enjoy. Suspicious Dan asks his son, who simply confirms it's true. He says that if it tastes like mutt meat, he'll judge it on the spot. Alpha grabs his sleeve as she silently prays that the people of the Fae clan are listening. Remy Holes ran it back, who wants to protect the boy. Dan begins to eat the 3 types of meat, which disappear very quickly. One over by the foo, the man says. He really enjoyed it and demands they bring him more. Asudi is surprised by the sudden change in reaction, but Dan shouts again for him to bring more. Not believing it, Donda asks if he's being serious. And the groom's father asked if he's not going to try something himself. Still not wanting to admit defeat, he simply replies that he thinks so. Then the leader of the Rudum clan declares for the banquet to continue. Meanwhile, Asuda apologizes to the girls for having to help him carry the dishes. Vina gets his attention by saying that her father is finally trying to meet. As soon as he is amazed to see Dawn eating his food, and noticing this, a man asks, "That's what he's staring at." The young man simply replies that this time, the leader is eating without complaining. But Donna surprises him by saying, Remy calls out that she's not working. However, the boy is curious about the answer. And Dama explains that he's a hunter and needs to hunt Jiba for himself and all the family members who can't. And for that reason, they must maintain strong teeth to eat properly. But if they eat tender meat, their teeth will weaken, so that's why he says the meat from the last meal was like poison. Donda says he thinks the food this time might help keep their bodies the way they are. Once again, Remy tries to get his attention, asking him to listen to what she has to say. But he asks the girl to wait a moment. Asuda says you can't eat dried meat, and then he used the firmer meat from the chest for them since it's like what they're used to. Meanwhile, the lower back and the upper shoulder meat were for Remy and the others. Curious, the man asked why he would do that, since food is only meant to sustain the body. With shining eyes, the boy says he doesn't need a reason. And that, as a chef, having people together and enjoying the meal is what matters. Donda says that's where he draws his pride from, and removing a single tooth from his necklace, he hands it to the boy, saying he'll grant a blessing for just this food. That really throws herself onto a suitor, knocking him over, saying that he forgot about her. Venus says the girl is very playful, and that being a firekeeper got her all excited. Remy then asks if they're going to roast more meat, or if they can start eating. Rana says that little girl was the one who worked the most. Surprised by that, Donna asks what that means. So Isuda reveals that he only brought a cooking idea, and Vina adds that they were the ones who acted as firekeepers. The young man says the food is something the Ru clan can make at any time. He also says that both Ruba and Rudo and the whole family can enjoy it. He made something for everyone to enjoy. In a better mood, Dantel. The man not to make such a gloomy face. Asu asked Remy if there's any more meat and she says no. That's why she came to ask him. Embarrassed, the boy says there's no more meat, and Donda asks what Isuda thought he'd do if he came asking about meat. Dan tells them to join the banquet, for a conversation, under the night sky illuminated by the star. I fought, and as soon as share a meal. The boy asked the hunch if she's angry for him not paying attention to her, or because there was no hamburger, but she denies both. Then she reveals that during the banquet, for a moment, he made her feel proud. But she ended up getting frustrated by that. He asked why she would feel frustrated since feeling proud is normal. And she says that as the clan leader, she still ended up pulling his feet. The boy thinks it's not great that she feels that way. So he calls out to Ifat. Holding out his hand, he says that this time he wasn't able to do it alone, and that the only reason he's there is because she accepted him into the clan. Ifat takes his hand and together, the two raise their hands, promising to give their all as firekeeper and clan leader. Gazarin grows curious, wondering what they're doing, and none of the others understand either. Meanwhile, Asuda and Epha compete to see who raised their hand higher. Says that for his service, she was thinking of giving him something and ask what he like. Throwing himself to the ground like a child, Asuda says he'd like the fluffy blanket, but Iface says it belongs to the Ru clan and she doesn't have what's needed to trade for it. He says he was joking and only said it because it felt like she wasn't joking. Then he brings up the Ru clan storage and says they need something useful, and he'd like to find a way to get his hands on those things. About it, Iface says they're running out of fruit wine, and that she usually trades gibbet tusks to get supplies from the Ru clan. But she says she can't really call it a gift, so she says that the next day they will go to Geno's, the trading city. Eiffel separates the Juba tusks for the trades. With the idea of buying supplies in the city, Asuna got very excited. By having to cross the bridge was his first big challenge, as there was no other path. Even so, a new path was good for him, and being able to see the horizon helped calm him down. Soon, Epha announced that she can already see the city. The girl announces Genos, the trading city, and it's already possible to notice the difference with the tall buildings and many different people. Asu defines it strange that so many people are wearing hoods and and comparing his appearance to theirs, he doesn't feel all that out of place. He looks curiously at a woman and Maifa asks if something's wrong, but he just says they're simply different from the forest people. The girl agrees with his observation and says that even people from other countries use the place to trade. A bit quiet, he wonders if it's just his imagination or if people are actually avoiding them. Then IFR speaks again and says they should head to the merchant. The merchant doesn't look at either of them while exchanging the tusks for coins. This makes us realize that it's pretty obvious they're being ignored. Epha says they can now buy everything they need and the boy agrees, thinking about how calm she is with the whole situation. At least he's starting to feel excited again and says he wants to buy a lot of things, but the girl says she can't afford that kind of luxury. After that, the two go buy the ingredients, and at every stall they are also ignored, even though Ifa seems unbothered by it. With the purchases in hand, the girl says they now have the basics, and that makes her so happy about the amazing amount they got. Then Ifa says they still have some bronze coins left and asks if he wants anything else. Excitedly at a food stall, imagining they're selling pork dumplings, a steward asks if they can go home after eating something, because he really wants to try something made by someone else. Though it's not her style, F5 agrees since it won't be too much extra weight. Approaching the food stall, the boy requested a serving of 2 dumplings, and the man widens his eyes in fear, calling them GBERS. As he served the dumplings, the vendor instructed them to leave the payment on the table. Fathered hands him the fume and says it's a well-deserved reward. However, the boy didn't seem particularly thrilled. He then inquired about what was troubling her. He jokingly suggested that if she didn't end up liking Kim, she could hold him accountable while they shared a meal. She asks if it's strange for gibbet eaters to try Kim Yusu meat. Then she explains that the forest people ask for a reward for hunting each Jiba, and to outsiders they seem barbaric. While their efforts often go unacknowledged, their hunting is what truly keeps the city safe. She donned a suit, appearing as though she wanted to appeal to the people she favored. The boy paused for a moment to consider his next move. With a smile, Ife admits that she also dislikes the people from the capital, finding them far too noisy. Knowing how she felt about their relationship brought a genuine smile to the boy's face. Shifting the conversation, the girl inquired about how he liked the taste of the Kanusa dumpling. He remarked that her cooking was actually superior, and Ifa supports him. Suddenly, they were interrupted by the sound of someone yelling in an incredibly rude manner. Observing the disturbance, Asuda immediately recognizes the individual involved. The first person he encountered was Diga's son, who scolded a little girl for not watching where she was going after she accidentally bumped into him. Meanwhile, the surrounding citizens questioned whether such fighting was permitted, with some calling for the guards to be summoned. Witnessing the scene, Ifai admits that the only way she knows how to handle cruelty is by returning it in kind. Shibara is one of the vendor's sticks, and even with a suit, as he tried to stop her, she simply told him to look after the bags instead. Once again, he made use of the staff's hooked end against his throat with her improvised weapon. The girl instructed the man to leave, or she'll use it against him. One of the mysterious figures stood by watching the scene unfold. Thinks the girl is really cool. The guards eventually arrived on the scene, demanding an explanation for the commotion. Diga then claimed that Epha had attacked him while he was stationed at the guard post. Upon seeing her holding a stick, he asked her for an explanation. Even though Asuda tries to say that Epha didn't do anything, the girl only says she wants to return the vendor's stick ready to approach the guard. Suddenly, a man steps forward, claiming to have witnessed the moment the drunkard bumped into the girl. Just as he was about to kick the child, I stepped in and used my stick to block the blow. The young boy then proceeded to explain the entire story. With the situation settled, the soldier declared that no fight had occurred and instructed the crowd to move along. Epha returns the staff and Suda inquired about the identity of the witness who had stepped forward to defend them. She said she allowed to offer her services to him. Suddenly the man appeared and insisted that there was no need for such gratitude, leaving Masuda very shocked by his sudden appearance. He explains that he has urgent business to attend to and offers his thanks for what they've shown him. Interesting and walk so. He continued on his path, hopping with pure joy. Back in the forest? I face as the boy looks tired from everything that happened, and he agrees, also saying the bridge swings too much. She suggested they start preparing dinner soon so they would have some time to unwind afterward. However, they soon realized they weren't alone, as several visitors were already waiting for them. The couple from the prestigious clan had arrived at their doorstep, and the man says they come with a request for the leader of the fat clan. I ask the reason for the visit and says he has a request for the firekeeper. The groom says he was impressed by Asuna's cooking skills and wants him to be the head chef for their wedding ceremony banquet. This makes the boy a little nervous about the proposal. Gajaran says he will be cooking for 100 people and apologizing for the sudden request. Asks if he accepts. The boy thinks this request means they recognize his talent. Asuda replies that he's happy about the request but asks if Gathering is sure about trusting something so important to him, since he's never cooked for that many people. Then he asks if he can have a few more days to prepare and gather information about ingredients and everything else he can. A couple looks at each other and Gajarin agrees, says he'll be waiting for his answer. Leaves Asuna worried, thinking about the size of the kitchen he'll need, as well as the ingredients and people to help him. iPhone calls out to him and in a very soft voice, says she's proud of him. But the boy didn't hear and apologizing, asks if she said something. Then she declares that he doesn't have to do everything alone and that as the clan leader she will help him. Confused, Rasuda says she seems so serious and thinks that hunters are the type to do everything alone. Annoying, Epha asks when exactly she looks angry, and the boy says that she is right now, but that's not what he wants to say. Then he surprises her by saying that it's because of her that he's here, because she accepted his stranger under her protection, and she's the reason he's come this far. Once again, softly, she praises the boy, saying it's because he made her acknowledge him using his own strength. Asuna apologizes for not being able to hear her clearly. And then she admits that his cooking is worthwhile and that you should trust in himself. Moved by her words, he thanks her. Sitting on the ground checking the ingredients, Asuda says that for 100 people, it's better to have several dishes. Then he picks up an ingredient and asks if it's commonly used. And she replies that she doesn't know. It picks up 2 more ingredients and asks the same question, and the girl also says she doesn't know. Thinking Asuna remembers that Epha had no idea what delicious food was until the first meal. Meanwhile, Remy, when she tasted it, said it was delicious. He also remembers Reina saying the same thing when they were in the storage room. So he says the answer lies in the Ru clan. Not too thrilled, Eve says there's no choice, but to rely on them. And the boy agrees that it feels a bit embarrassing. But the huntress says she'll ask for permission to visit the Ru clan village, and that he should come with her. The boy agrees, saying that's what's expected from a leader. At the village, Rana says she already knows about the ceremony, and that they don't need to worry because her father already gave permission. Then she asks if Asuda is going to be a head chef. While Asuda feels awkward, still unsure of his decision, I find it a surprise they already have permission. The boy wants to know if, since the banquet will be held there, the food will be prepared there too, and Rihanna just says she thinks so. Asuda then says he remembers that there are 4 stoves and wonders if they can make a meal big enough for 100 people. For such large portions, Rana thinks it would be good to make Jiba point in an area soup, and asks if the 4th grill can be used to grill meat. He agrees. Asuda thinks they can create a dish that could feed 100 people. The boy talks to Rina about when they were in the storage room and she offered him some ingredients, which surprises her that he still remembers. But out that, he says he has a request. You'd like to ask a few questions to the women of the village. Entering the warehouse where some women are, Asura announces that he wants to ask any of them with experience as a cook. He then asks what ingredients they use and how they use them. They are left speechless by the question. Eiffel whispers to the boy that if he also asked to be taught how to use them, it would make sense for the couple to have asked him to be the chef. He says he'll think about what dish to serve, but since he doesn't have much time, he needs information. Asuda explains that since the ingredients are from another world, he doesn't really know how to use them, and if he went by intuition, everything would turn out a mess. Another woman from the clan arrives, and Rihanna says she came at just the right time and asks her to help Asuda. But what's the point of this? Conan says she normally uses jigo, even though she doesn't quite understand how it works, but she likes eating it like a vegetable. Remy holds another ingredient, and the woman says that for the girl she uses, chaki, because it turns soft and delicious. Vienna has another one in her hand called tino, which looks like a leaf. She says she likes it because it gets really soft when cooked. Asuna asked Reina since she mentioned various seasonings last time. She shows in one and says it's called taraba, and the boy remembers buying it in the city. The girl explains that it can be eaten raw, but if cooked, it can develop a sweet and also slightly bitter taste. And the boy realizes it's like a tomato. Reina says she'll ask her father to add more ovens and that they can buy the vegetables at the market. But the only problem is the jiba since women don't hunt. That worries the boy, and realizing the sun is setting and the men will be back soon, he decides he'll ask him. Looking a little offended, Epha says she can also hunt any abtihe. Asked if she doesn't need help with that. Reina notices the men have arrived, but they seem different. To comments on the smell of iron, and Epha says it's the mix of red jiba fluid and human fluid. The boy is frightened when he sees Ruto badly injured. Asuna watches the commotion, try and understand what happened. Meanwhile, the men carry the injured boy and decide to sit him under a tree. Tries to approach, but stops him. Meanwhile, a warning goes to Ruto, who opens his eyes when called. In desperation, the boy says he's fine, having only hit his head and asked about her father. Then Shinru says her father will no longer be able to live as a hunter. The girl explains that the man hasn't woken up yet, but from what she heard, her father's body was crushed by a jiba. She then says that at this rate her family might perish. The girl says she's the only one who can hunt, and that she doesn't think she can support her whole family alone. Yet she apologizes for involving Ruto in this. Masuda, watching the conversation, asked Epha if the mission failed, and she confirms, saying that at least no one was eliminated. That makes the boy think about how the huntress always goes after Juba alone and comes back as if it were nothing, which makes him curious about how she manages it safely. He attempted to question her regarding the situation, but then Shin approaches, calling out to Ifei. The girl asks if she still hunts alone, and with a positive response. She requested guidance on how to properly conduct a sacrifice hunt, but she says she doesn't know about that, and that the most important thing now is to take care of the wounded. Irritated, the girl shouts that Epha always hunts alone, so it's impossible that she doesn't know, and desperately begs to be taught how to hunt for her family. Asuri gets curious about the sacrifice hunt, but Ifat tells girl that this is yet another reason not to talk about useless things. That causes the girl to leave angrily. Asuda ponders the significance of Ifei's cold attitude. The situation felt exactly as it did when they first crossed paths. The huntress suggested setting aside the banquet discussion until the following day. Nevertheless, Asuda remained eager to uncover the truth behind the sacrifice hunt. He notices Ruto has gotten up and gone somewhere, as I felt a weight while he goes after the boy. Asuda caught up to Ruto and offered his shoulder for support, concernedly checking on the young hunter's condition. Wiping away the blood, Ruto explained that he had only sustained a minor head injury. He decided to head to the river to wash up and asked Asuda to guide him, which amused the firekeeper, as she remembered that it was Ruto who had led the way during their last trip. Standing in the river, the boy began wiping the liquid from his body. His face turned a deep shade, saying that his head feels better now and he can return home on his own. Still curious and a bit hesitant, the firekeeper asked her if she had any information regarding the sacrificial hunt. Initially, it appeared as though both of them had missed their mark. They finally reached a point of mutual understanding. Ruto questioned what he intended to do with the intel, but Asuda clarified that the information wasn't for his own benefit. The Ru clan youth then questioned whether Shin was the one who had shared that information with him. Ruto asks if the leader of the Fuck clan wouldn't know more about it. He explains that the hunters utilize a sweet fragrance to lure the Jiba toward them. Isuda is taken aback as he recalls the familiar scent he first noticed during his initial encounter with Ifei. Although Ruto admits he is only speculating, the firekeeper remains eager to hear more. I first said she didn't know about it and was quite cold with Shin. Then the boy explains that since it's an old hunting method, he doesn't know much, but that they use scents to attract gibbers. As they position themselves as bait, a student suddenly realized the entire situation was a distraction. While the method was undeniably dangerous, Gother Boy argued that protecting their families is a point of pride for hunters, driving everyone involved in the sacrificial hunt to do the same. This makes a pseudo reflect, thinking it might be something toxic, but then he understands that it's all for the sake of family. A sudden idea began to take shape in his mind. He apologizes for letting Ruto go back alone and says he needs to return to the village. Still failing to grasp the situation, the boy insisted once more that he was ready to head back. Finally, Asuda understands the meaning of hunting, and in the middle of his run, he finds Alpha. Clearly concerned, she asked if something had happened. He simply expressed his gratitude for her staying by his side before announcing his departure. He approached the men of the village to speak with them. The door of the house opens where everyone is gathered. Donda asked him to wait before entering, as they were in the middle of tending to the wounded. Suda acknowledged that his timing for this question was far from ideal. They were requested to hunt 30 Gibas to provide food for the upcoming banquet. Shinru's steady gaze made the boy feel as though she was judging him for making such a request while her family was still suffering. While he realized there was nothing inherently wrong, he knew that if he didn't speak up now, the opportunity might soon pass him by. Shin's father woke up and instinctively reached for his weapon, for a coat, looking at his daughter with a small smile. He says that hunting for others is a source of PR, pride, and even if he can no longer do it, she doesn't need to throw that away. She pledged to do her best to hunt Jiba for the sake of the wedding, prompting Kira to ask if she was truly certain about her decision. Donna then reaches a decision regarding the men. The members of the Ru clan are prepared to hunt as many Jibas as the situation requires. Filled with joy, Asudith expressed her gratitude, now truly understanding the deep bond they shared with one another. Brimming with confidence, the boy vowed to prepare the finest meal for the wedding banquet, dedicated to the families and everyone who had put their faith in him. As several days passed, Suda began making preparations for the banquet. He was impressed by the precision of the men's butchery, as they credited the boy's instructions for making the work much easier. The hunters successfully secured 30 gibas, draining the blood and butchering the carcasses precisely as the boy had demonstrated. While his meat-cleaning method faced criticism, Danda remained firm, stating he would continue as long as at least one family was satisfied. He's about to ask the women to prepare the vegetables when Rimi shows up calling for him. Filled with excitement, the The girl presented the vegetables to the women, explaining that they had successfully brought them from the city as requested. Seeing the quantity, thinks it's perfect for the 100 people, and tells the women he's counting on them until the banquet's over. Rooney calls a suitor and says they still haven't used Taraba, asking what they'll do with all that was brought. The boy then explained his plan to use it as an ingredient for a new recipe. From outside the kitchen, I noticed his peculiar movements as he maneuvered through the group of men. As she spotted the members of the Sun Clan, she questioned what could have brought them there. Clearly concerned, Asud asked if Diva was there as well. Concerned about the potential consequences of starting a conflict, she decided to investigate the situation first. She instructed him to remain right where he was on the ground. Nearby, the lifeless body of a defeated Jiba lay on the ground. One of the sons clarified that they had only arrived to present a gift in exchange for their spot at the banquet. Donda questioned whether that was truly the name they used for the GIF. While this explained their lack of preparation, the Ru clan leader complicated matters by stating he never actually invited anyone from the Sun clan. Donda instructed them to tidy up the gifts they had received. His clan was far too busy to concern themselves with such matters. He then ordered him to leave, clearly struggling to keep his rising anger under control. Diga offered a small smile as he questioned whether the Ru clan intended to be disrespectful to the Sun clan, reminding them that they were only there to assist with the wedding preparations. The leaders locked eyes, neither one willing to back down in the tense standoff. As he continued his approach, he began phasing through his surroundings. He was visibly annoyed, his irritation plain to see. However, she soon caught sight of a strange, pseudo-like figure. Sensing something was odd, she called out to him. Diga blamed the Ru clan for their exclusion from the banquet, prompting Asuda to question his presence while the boy angrily demanded to know if he was the one responsible for the attack on the Jiba. Digger then questioned what the problem would be if that were indeed the case. The boy contemplates his own sense of identity. The boy reached out and grabbed Diva's coat. Wei questioned whether the man truly understood the weight of his actions, or if he even considered the forest dwellers to be fellow human beings. The man landed a punch on the horrific suit, sending it crashing onto the meat table. He sent everything crashing down to the floor. The others looked on as Epha approached, his expression simmering with rage. Refusing to yield, the boy stands up and firmly grabs hold. Steve has once again transformed back into his fur-covered form. They demanded that the man offer a formal apology to the entire Ru clan. Once again, the man managed to send the suit crashing to the ground. This time, the timing of the kick was perfect. I felt called out to him in concern, but it was already too late. Donda restrained the boy, leaving him bewildered by the man's sudden intervention. The clan leader intervened, instructing the boy to step aside while he took charge of the situation himself. David questioned the boy's identity and firmly demanded an apology. Dotna identified himself as a guest of the clan, prompting the man to respond. This development only reinforced the idea that an apology was more necessary than ever. Growing impatient, Dana warned that any further words would be treated as an official declaration of war from the Sun clan against the Ru clan. Diga was visibly taken aback by this sudden revelation. He then ordered Mede to return the cube, prompting the man to complain about the wasted effort he had spent hunting it down. Regardless, he followed through with what was requested of him. Eiffel called out, attempting to get the pseudo's attention. While he worked to preserve the meat for the upcoming banquet, Rudo questioned whether the food on the other table would be sufficient. The rest of the group joined the search for more meat and consulted the firekeeper, who confirmed it was suitable for their needs. With a surge of confidence, Asuda promised to make up for the lost meat, determined not to let the group's hard work go to waste. He watched the entire scene unfold, feeling a deep sense of pride for the boy. She was caught off guard when Donna suddenly brought up Asuda. He noted that the boy appeared to have been injured earlier, possibly with a twisted ankle among other wounds, and promised to examine him properly later. Surprised by the sudden question, she hesitated briefly before taking full responsibility for the situation. Donda explains that her intervention with Diga would have only escalated the tension, given her history with the Sun clan. Meanwhile, the man notes that although Asuda isn't a forest native, he understands his wedding duties and is surprisingly a talented chef. This leaves her reflecting on the true significance of the boy's role. She met up with Asuda, apologizing for her late arrival and asking how she could assist. He then simply requested that the Jiba fur scattered throughout the area be cleaned up. As they prepared to begin, he informed the women that they would be crafting a new dish called Jiba and Poitin soup. He further instructed them to increase the amount of fried food while reducing the grilled meat, before adding one final request. They set out to prepare a new soup, featuring Taraba as the key ingredient. Rena's excitement grew once she learned exactly what they would be working with. Preparations for the banquet were soon underway. Everything proceeded smoothly without any further complications. A tower adorned with floral decorations was constructed specifically for the upcoming ceremony. With the ceremony concluded, the wedding banquet officially got underway. Asuda presented the pot of food, revealing it as the new dish specifically crafted for the upcoming banquet. Mina noted the dish's red color and wondered if it was Jupa soup, while Reina picked up the distinct scent of taraba. He recalled the girl's earlier comments regarding the vegetable. It becomes clear that shuraba bears a striking resemblance to a pumpkin or a tomato. He then blended the mixture into a smooth puree. Additionally, he incorporated the leftover fruit into the tomato soup and prepared a variety of colorful dishes to give the ceremonial feast a vibrant look. The boy steps forward to begin his service. Feeling hungry, Dan asked for some roasted meat, which made Masuda realize he should have been more generous with the portions earlier. He presented the taraba soup to Grandma Juba, who was grateful to have a meal she could easily enjoy despite her weak teeth, just as Eiffel called out to him that the ceremony was beginning. Dressed in their ceremonial attire, the bride and groom stood bathed in the warm glow of the afternoon sun and firelight, leaving her mesmerized by the beauty of the moment. He expressed a sincere sense of sympathy for the father's situation. He expressed a strange sense of relief regarding his own passing, prompting a confused Epha to ask for clarification. She then informed them that the ceremony was drawing to a close. It was also noted that the bride and groom would be passing by their location once again. Gazaran and his bride walk past with joyful smiles, a sight that fills Asuda with a sense of genuine happiness. He held on to the hope that the feast would be enough to satisfy everyone. Ifra announced that the banquet was beginning and told him to stay put, leaving the boy confused as he asked what she planned to do. She informs him that she needs to change her clothes before they proceed. The encounter left him feeling noticeably flustered. Observing his reaction, iPhone coldly asked if he wanted his eyes torn out before ordering him to hurry to the banquet. It was then that Asuna noticed several other women were also present. Moments later, Dan calls out to him, requesting another serving of grilled meat. She took the opportunity to express her sincere gratitude to the boy for everything he had done. The guests expressed their delight as they sampled the dishes prepared by the firekeeper. Asuda expressed his gratitude, noting that the banquet was only possible thanks to everyone's collective effort. Dana then requested that he bring 5 additional pieces of meat. With the meat finally grilled, he prepared to enjoy his meal. He sets the items onto the plate just as someone passes by him. He recognizes that the person is actually Ifa. He asked what was troubling her, noticing for the first time that she had let her hair down. Beyond that, she wore a dress adorned with flowers, a style far removed from what he was used to seeing. Ifa questioned whether there was any issue with her wearing her hair down. Stunned and speechless, he claims there's no issue. But internally, he's convinced the outfit is the real problem. Dan shouted at his muse as she began to grow cold. Clad in a suit of leaves, he offered her no further explanation. He noted that while her usual outfit was great, this new look was equally impressive in its own way. After delivering the meat to the man, the boy offered a comment about his attire. Dan explained that wearing those gowns was a special privilege reserved for the banquet, intended to make the women represent vibrant flowers. Beyond just iPhod, the rest of the women were also dressed in nearly identical outfits. Asuda questioned the symbolism of the flowers they represented, prompting Dan to provide an explanation once again. Ultimately, the story focuses on the journey of marriage and the creation of a new family. He emphasized the importance of the forest dwellers participating happily in the festivities, even encouraging a suitor to enjoy the occasion as well. The forest people gathered around a massive bonfire to celebrate a wedding ceremony. The ceremony finally reached its conclusion. Under the clear, sunny sky, he offered a smile and suggested that they should finally head home. The huntress then spoke up to ask a question. Although there was a suggestion to ask the Rue clan to stay another day, he disagreed, citing concerns over their dwindling food supplies and the need to head out for provisions. Ifra notes that this seems to be his only priority, prompting him to challenge her on whether she truly believes his concerns are so limited. Confirming that they had been properly compensated, Asuda vowed to excel in his duties as the Falkland's firekeeper, a sentiment Epha proudly shared. As they traveled, a girl questioned whether he was certain about their plans to go shopping. Realizing they would have to cross the bridge once more, the group was far from pleased with the situation. Having forgotten that specific detail, they suddenly spotted someone walking toward them. Standing on the bridge, they appeared visibly shaken as the tension began to rise. The boy couldn't shake the feeling that he had encountered him somewhere before. The man inadvertently stepped on a loose floorboard. He reached out and successfully secured his grip on the rope. Ifres claims they're going to offer their support, but in reality, they have no intention of helping him. The man warned them not to cross all at once, fearing the bridge would collapse under the weight. At last, they reached the safety of the house. Asuda couldn't help but feel a sense of curiosity. The question remained as to how the girl would navigate this particular situation. Brimming with excitement, the man began exploring every corner of the house with keen interest. He inquired about the specific materials used for the floor. Standing on the floor, he found the site of the wall to be quite impressive. The situation traces back to a few hours earlier, when they had first come to their rescue. After saving the man from a dangerous fall, he expressed his gratitude for their timely assistance. Epha greeted him with a cheerful smile, inquiring about his presence there. He explained that he was planning to go camping in the surrounding forest. She informed her suitor that it would be best to move on. She suggests they finally head back home, and he readily agrees to the idea. As they continued on their way, they realized they were being shadowed, much to their growing irritation. Epha questioned the reason behind the man's pursuit. He identified them as the forest people who caused the disturbance in the city, admitting that they had piqued his interest. This development clearly didn't sit well with the girl. Visibly annoyed, he reacted as she harshly ordered him to get out of her sight. Returning to the scene, Asuda questions the man's presence as she explains that he had been stealthily tailing them from a distance. While searching through the house, he stopped to ask about the furnace. A man in a suit explains the culinary process, sparking the protagonist's curiosity about the upcoming dishes. Excited to share his passion, the boy explains that he usually prepares meals centered around Jiba meat. Surprised yet clearly delighted, the man asked if he could sample the meat. As I made my exit, I found myself feeling deeply puzzled by the nature of the request. This immediately sparked a deep sense of hatred within the girl. She suggested that the suitor offer the man some grilled meat, hoping it would convince him to reconsider. He defended the man by clarifying his true identity as Kamul Yoshu, also known as Gord. Kira asks Asuda for clarification, leading him to explain that his role involves escorting high-profile individuals on their travels. As his form began to dissipate, he revealed his fascination with the forest people and their southern lineage, noting that those who do not interact with the gods are known as the Northern Whirlwinds. While Asuda began preparing the Juba meat, the man watched on with a sense of curiosity. Impressed by the final result, the man expressed how honored he felt as a Westerner to experience such a dish, while the boy urged him to start eating before the meat grew cold. With the help of an additional hand, Epha looked on as the creature began to chew on the meat. He came to a sudden halt, turning his attention toward the girl. He realized that everything was proceeding exactly as he had anticipated. Given his origins in the capital, he likely found the entire situation quite distasteful. To their surprise, he catches them off guard by admitting that the meat is actually delicious. Experiencing such a flavor for the first time, he asked if the clan would keep the secret of the meat between them. Epha maintained a stern expression, leading Asuda to worry that she was becoming genuinely irritated. The girl then inquired if that was everything. Rising to her feet, she pointed out that he had yet to experience the true pinnacle of Jiba meat. This development immediately sparked Yoshu's curiosity. She smiled while introducing the dish as a hamburger. Intrigued, the man felt a growing desire to test it out for himself. The moment she realizes the truth, she decides she simply wants to eat it herself. Meanwhile, the marksman was busy putting his plan into motion. The man recounts the details of his long journey and explains the motivations behind his actions. He escorted the merchants from the east, ensuring their safety until they finally arrived at the kingdom. He explained the plans they had made for their journey ahead. As he passed by the forest people's camp, he decided to take the opportunity to investigate. Epha concluded the explanation by recounting his fall from the bridge, but despite understanding their situation, the girl remained adamant about not welcoming anyone from the stone capital. He responded by acknowledging that genuine trust is built through actions rather than just words. Carrying the dishes, Asuna offers an apology for the interruption and announces that the hamburgers are ready. Explaining that time was short, he managed to prepare only a small serving of poutine and some pan-fried vegetables. Salivating at the sight, the man inquired which dish was the hamburger and asked for an explanation of the other items. An irritating companion dismisses his concerns, telling him to focus on eating and stop asking questions. After finishing the prayers, Asuda invited everyone to begin their meal. As he sampled the dish, the man's eyes had been reduced to a mangled, bloody pulp. As the gap widened, the two of them began to feel increasingly uneasy. Epha questioned his actions, but the boy immediately grew defensive, insisting she shouldn't act as though he had done something wrong. Without warning, the man began to take action. Collapsing to the ground, his tears intensified as he marveled at the soft texture and incredible flavor, struggling to believe that he was actually eating Jiba. The pair stood in stunned silence, completely unable to react. Yoshu admitted his familiarity with the stone capital's cuisine, yet he couldn't fathom how the boy had crafted such an impressive dish. He attempted to point out the details and conduct an assessment. He questioned whether the object before him was truly a potato. Once he regained his composure, he apologized for getting carried away, and asked if the forest people ate that meal every day, though Asuda wasn't sure of their routine. Joining the discussion, Iface noted that there were no grounds for criticism against the man who introduced these methods. Asuda felt a wave of embarrassment for being the cause of the trouble, while the man questioned if he truly belonged to the forest people, noting his distinct lack of resemblance to the others. The boy whispered to her, asking what he should explain, and she advised him to simply say whatever came to mind. Visibly shaken, he explained that he was originally from Japan and had suddenly materialized on the outskirts of the forest. Understandably, the man wasn't particularly pleased with this development. He then inquired whether the boy was an immigrant. Epha told Yoshu that the boy's origins were irrelevant as they wouldn't change the flavor of the food. He fell silent, allowing several seconds to pass. After a brief moment of consideration, he agrees. Epha urged everyone to resume eating, catching Suda off guard by suggesting the hamburgers weren't sufficient, though the boy noted he had prepared several more. Seeing an opening, Yoshu also asked for another portion of poutine. They exchanged their final goodbyes before parting ways. Expressing his gratitude for the warm hospitality, the man noted how much he appreciated learning more about the surrounding forest. While Epha felt satisfied with the situation, Asuda took a moment to warn the man to remain cautious while crossing the bridge. Kamua Yoshu then bid the duo farewell. Epha likens the man's presence to a hurricane, and the boy agrees as he recalls the man's overwhelming strength. A suggestion was made for him to open a stall in the city of Shakuba. The man repeated his offer one last time before finally waking up. He offered to ask on their behalf, seeing as they couldn't wait any longer. While chewing on some dried meat, he admitted that he was simply too frightened to have done anything else. She questioned whether he had seen himself crossing the bridge in his dreams. He recounted a dream in which Kamua Yoshu was pursuing him. Finding the situation peculiar, he began to investigate. He admitted that the situation was truly terrifying and asked for your perspective. Once again, his thoughts drifted back to the stone capital. Seizing the chance to confirm his suspicions, he mentioned that he had also been considering the situation. The boy says it was a bad joke to tell him to open a shop in the stone capital, and Epha asks if it isn't a good idea. Surprise, Asuda says that the left. Recalling their previous visit, she tried to walk back her harsh insults about the people there, prompting him to ask if she truly harbored a hatred for the place. Epha says it's a bit different from hatred, but they're obsessed. Not understanding, the boy asks if it's about money and almost pleading. She asks if it wasn't like that the other day. She explained that Jiba tusks could be used to purchase the necessary ingredients, and he understands that The girl explains that, for the time being, Jiba tusks are the only items they have available to sell. She enthusiastically explained that selling Jiba meat could turn it into a valuable trade commodity and provide them with hamburgers, noting several other benefits to the idea. The boy noted her growing interest in the proposal, prompting her to defend herself by claiming that meat would bring them prosperity. She added that points could be purchased in specific zones without the need to harvest tusks, which would help lower the mortality rate from malnutrition. Feeling that the conversation had become a bit too heavy, Asuda offered an apology. He announced he was heading out to get a more detailed explanation from the others. Ultimately, Korn and Redim shared their final message with him. The sentiment remained the same, even though the citizens of the capital viewed them with disdain. Eiffel addressed the group of boys. Enduring the intense pain, he requested to simply head toward his destination. By this point, they had already reached the capital. He inquired about finding Yoshu at the inn, but she noted that they would only locate him there if he had successfully crossed the bridge. Upon reaching the city, Epha asked him to take notice of the pedestrians passing by. The boy observed that despite their diverse features and skin tones, they all shared a common expression of irritation. Noticing the blatant indifference from some, he began to wonder if their cold attitude was a trait of their specific race. The boy grew concerned that selling chips and meat might lead to trouble, sensing that the public's indifference wasn't necessarily a good sign, especially with the added risk of a forest dweller operating a stall there. Suddenly, she finally discovered it. He inquired if she was referring to a forest bowler's stall, but she was left completely confused by his question. She explained that she had located the inn where Yoshu was staying. He sought to make his escape at the earliest possible opportunity. When he asked to return home, Epha pulled him along, insisting that leaving now would make the entire trip a waste since she knew he would only spend his time procrastinating. He proceeded to step inside the room. A young boy soon approached to offer him a greeting. She inquired if he was there as a potential suitor. Confused by the situation, the firekeeper asked him to identify himself. The boy introduced himself as Lido, identifying as a disciple of Yoshu. Asuda felt a wave of sympathy for the boy, though he couldn't quite grasp the reason behind her pity. Leto directed them to the second floor to meet his master, but the boy pointed out that the man had failed to show up despite extending the invitation. He then proceeded to escort them back to his room. Lado admitted that he believed he had already woken up within his dream. She offered an apology for the situation, but as Asuda tried to excuse himself to get some rest, Epha shoved him. Upon entering the room, they found the man lying across the table in a bizarre and awkward position. Asuda is gripped by fear, assuming the man has been defeated, while Ife finds his steady posture to be remarkably majestic. The boy attempted to wake Camilla, eventually resorting to knocking her off the bed. Eventually, he arrived to wake the man. He then called out to the individual. Once again, the focus shifted back to the elderly man. Asuda inquired if they were finally able to leave, but his request was quickly cut short. He was caught off guard by Kimura. He then suggested that they shift their focus to discussing business. Suda was left feeling quite perplexed by the situation. The man clarifies that in order to establish a shop within the city, paying rent is a mandatory requirement. He prices the item at 10 kimu meat buns, which amounts to 10 red copper coins, and asks for a 10% commission, though the boy is far too distracted by thoughts of the food to pay much attention. The man then inquired whether he had already eaten them. After the boy offered a brief response, Kimura pointed out a stall they had established nearby featuring a famous product, convincing Asuda that Jiba meat would be a worthy rival for them. However, the boy harbored doubts about whether customers would actually be willing to purchase that type of meat. Drawing from his experience as a taster, the man felt certain that others would enjoy it too. However, Asuda remained skeptical, recalling how he had broken into tears after eating Jiba. Leto asked the firekeeper if there was an issue, while Suda was preoccupied with what he was reading. He pondered the term cameos, feeling as though he had heard something similar once before. The boy then asked Epha for a chance to speak with someone from the forest people, and she agreed to help him. With that, Kami will understand that the proposal will remain pending. Dan says it's almost dinner time, and asks what Suda wants to talk about. The boy says he actually just wants his opinion, and the man again brings up dinner. As soon as the boy finishes speaking with eyes full of emotion and happiness, Dan asks if a Suda king would ask him to try a new grilled meat. You're trying to say that it's not. That the boy can't say anything well, being struck by Dan's expression as if it were a beam of light. It's a Suda who prepares dinner and Dan. Nobis says it's the same grilled meat recipe, and the boy wonders why he even came. While they eat, Epha nudges the boy and he realizes his chief is starting to get irritated. Gajaron finally asks Asuda if he's worried about the discussion the other day, and he agrees, saying he wants to know Dan's opinion. The chief says that selling the meat in the city will be like fangs and horns. It doesn't carry the blessing of the forest, so it's not a taboo. But the boy is worried that people might not like his food. With his mouth full of meat, Dan says it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to think there are people who wouldn't understand how delicious the food is. To wrap things up, Gazarin asks if the rest of the conversation shouldn't be just a Monday fat clan. Since it's very late, the two stay in a room prepared by the routine clan. A student is shocked that there's only one bed, and the woman asks if there's really a problem with them sleeping together since they're from the same clan. Ni5 steps forward thanking them for the room despite their son visit. The girl touches the carpet and says as expected, it's soft and high quality, and Asuna doesn't understand how she can think about that. She's already sitting on the bed and tells him to go ahead and lie down, asking if he doesn't like all that softness. Embarrassed, Asuna asks if he should request another bed. She says he likes comfort, but should give up since it's not their house. He tries to say that's not it, but Ifak tells him to hurry up and lie down. Masuda lies with his back to Epha and becomes very tense, feeling that she's really close. She calls out to him, which scares him even more. Ifor asked if he's decided whether he'll open the stall in the commercial city, then pulls him to face her. He says that first he doesn't have enough utensils to open a shop, and she wants to know what comes after that. And he says it's not just his problem, and that he'll need a bit of money and also her permission. She says that from the beginning he already had her permission, and that maybe he hasn't realized it yet, but he's just looking for an excuse not to go. Ifra says that deep down he doesn't really want to have his own shop, which catches the boy by surprise. Then she says she has a favorite to ask and pleads for him to let. The boy gets a little embarrassed hearing those words, and when Ifa touches his face, he holds her hand while observing every detail of her body as her eyes shine. Sooner walks across the room to the door and opens it, letting out a breath. He's clearly excited, and with curiosity, Ifa asks what happened for him to be like that. Smiling, he says he's made his decision and that he'll open the stall. Alpha then acknowledged that she understood. Additionally, he learned that he was scheduled for a meeting with Kamua Yoshio. As they trekked through the forest, the hunt finally got underway. He points out that they are no longer on the path leading to the city, leading the boy to believe they were lost. Asuda suggested returning home to decide which items they would put up for sale. Ifra remained silent, offering no further words to him. Upon returning home, the suitor attempted to discuss the situation. Naturally, he also had to figure out what to do with the Jiba meat and his next steps. The girl remarked that it should function as expected. He attempted to protest, but she quickly cut him off. He remained adamant about having hamburgers. Left with no other choice, he had to focus on getting them ready. Inspecting the meal, Iface noted that the portions were significantly smaller than usual. She inquired if she was finally permitted to start eating. She eagerly volunteered to retrieve the wooden spoon, but Asura stopped her to ask a question. He asked her to wait, explaining that they wouldn't have enough spoons and plates for everyone if they opened the stall immediately. Seeking guidance on her next move, she asked what she should do, only for him to tell her to eat. She reached out and used her hands. Finding the object peculiar, She reached out to pick it up. She could feel the intense heat radiating from the meat. He began casually tossing the object from one hand to the other. Feeling uneasy, Suda begins to voice a potential suggestion. It appeared that hamburgers were a bit difficult for her to manage. However, she denied the claim and tossed the object aside. She then placed the piece of meat into her mouth. Still steaming from the heat, the meat began to drip with juices. The boy then suggested that the name might be Humbert. Asuda touched the point, prompting Mullen to react. An idea took shape in his mind. By pairing the kimyu with bread, he could create a meal that was much easier to consume. While wrapping the meat in dough, he makes a bit of a mess, prompting the girl to ask if he's doing it intentionally, though he quickly promises to clean it all up. She handed over the meat wrapped in poitin, inviting her to give it a taste. I was the one responsible for making the choice. He nervously inquired about her thoughts on the matter. Feeling slightly disappointed, she noted that while the juices were well contained, the poitin's hard texture would have been better if the hamburger and poitin were served as separate components. Clearly impressed by her sincerity, Asuda took a moment to thank her. He then expressed his dissatisfaction, noting that the dish lacked enough sauce and had an unappealing texture. He wrapped a cloth around his head, hoping to spark some inspiration for new recipes using the ingredients he had on hand. The huntress simply agreed, continuing to finish the rest of the meat. After a while, he announced he was finished, and I observed the results. She curiously inquired if what she was looking at was edible. He moved in to take a shot at the arrogant man. As she chews the food with a look of pure delight, it becomes clear that her emotions are incredibly easy to read. Iafra asserted that this would finally allow him to defeat Kamua Yoshu, though her words left him feeling rather perplexed. Kamiwa then inquired if the sample of the product he intended to sell was inside the bag. Visibly flustered, the man urged him to serve the meal as quickly as possible. Dropping the formalities, Asuda bluntly expressed his disgust for Kamua, who laughed it off as a joke before asking to inspect the food. The box where it's stored in hand it to him, and Kamiwa notices it's still warm. Grabbing the hamburger, surprised, he asked if it's the same jibami he had before, but he notices it's red. But Asui explains that he cooked the meat with tarapa sauce and to improve the texture placed it between Tino and Aria. Two look at each other. Then Cameo tries the meat, having the same reaction as every time he's eaten it, even offering some Toledo to try. The boy is very happy and says the crunchiness combined with the tender meat is delicious with the sauce. Asuna just thanks them for enjoying his new creation inspired by the American hamburger. Curious, Kanua asks what the name of the food will be, and feeling inspired, he says he'll be called the Jiba burger. Then he asks if he can run a stall with that. The man says that regarding the stall, the owner of the Kim Yuen will lend one, which impresses the boy, who asks if it was really that easy. Asuda says the next step is to decide how much to charge, and Kamua says he'll leave that to him, and that he should manage the shop however he likes. The man says that whenever he wants to open the store, he just needs to say so, and the young cook thanks him. Masuda is satisfied that everyone says his burger is delicious, though he's a bit worried about the popularity of Cuba meat. Looking at Cameo's reaction, he realizes the man is actually very worried. Back in the forest, Aswade is sitting outside the house, and I have faced as he's been thinking about something ever since they left the inn. The boy explains that he's thinking about what price he should sell the Jiba burgers for. He says he's considering selling them for 2 red copper coins, which is the same price as the Kimyu meat bread. Eiffel just listens and he continues, saying he's using the same ingredients plus Tino, Tarapa, and Kigo. Fawful. He says that if he makes 20 per day with a unit price, that would be 65 coins. And with the rental of the spot and stall for 10 days, doing the math along with the ingredients, which costs around 65 cents, he concludes they'll have a profit. Growing restless, he collected his reward of 1.35 red copper coins. Epha asked for clarification, prompting him to explain his logic based on the calculations from their sales. If they can sell 60 burgers within 10 days, they'll successfully avoid falling into the red. Overwhelmed by the stress of the situation, Rifle slumped to the ground as a sharp headache took hold. He questioned whether they truly needed to sell 60 burgers within the 10-day limit. Feeling concerned, Asuda asks if she is all right or if his calculations are incorrect, but she reassures him that everything is fine. Donning her fur coat, she reminded him that as the head of the family, she had duties to fulfill and expected him to start thinking and acting for himself. Asuna curiously questioned the girl about where they were headed. She announced that she was heading out for a hunt. He pointed out that she had been acting this way consistently as of late. As Epha assists him with the stall, he suddenly realizes that if she were no longer there to help, he would have to manage everything by himself. Asuna realized that he would be responsible for every step of the process, including cooking, serving, and transporting everything himself. Noticing his sudden discouragement, Epha stepped in to ask what was troubling him. He then brought up her status as a hunter, a remark she took slight offense to. As a potential solution, he is informed that members of the Ru clan are interested in the stall, and that he should speak with them directly. As the door slowly shut, Asuda remained on the ground, filled with apprehension about his upcoming conversation with the Ruklan. Ina appeared after overhearing their discussion, confirming that the rumors about the stall were true. Recognizing her potential for sales, Asuda invited her to join him, though she first wanted to know exactly what he planned to sell. Asuda suggested that rather than explaining, it would be much more effective to show her directly. She studied the boy and the ingredients laid out on the table with a curious expression. He explained his intention to push his equipment to its absolute limit. After adding the ingredient to the potion, he proceeded to bake the mixture. He demonstrated the proper technique by tossing it into a bowl. He explained that the ingredients for the burgers would be prepared at that location. Judas begins preparing the tarapa sauce, explaining that the process involves blanching and peeling the ingredients before draining them and adding a splash of fruit wine. As he stirred the pot, he added mineral salt and herbs to season the dish while it cooked. Eventually, the tarpaulin began to soften. With the sauce prepared, he gave instructions to keep the burgers small. They were sized perfectly to fit in the palm of a hand, leaving Vina quite impressed. He then gave instructions to slice the material from Tino's section into strips and spread them across the large pontoon. He then set the burger in place and finished the dish by pouring the sauce over it. He further explains that placing one final piece on top completes the burger, signaling that the lesson has come to an end. Feeling uncertain about whether the lesson was truly finished, she questioned him, only for Asuda to insist that she give it a try. She proceeded to take the very first bite. He then began to chew. Her expression shifted to surprise as she swallowed nervously. Venus was delighted, noting that the material felt incredibly soft and the garment was a perfect fit. Asud explained that the key to achieving such a soft texture was the use of grated jigo. Hearing her perspective clearly lifted the boy's spirits. Displaying the ingredients laid out on the table, the boy noted that he also had all the necessary utensils ready. He noted that they would need more twigs for the fire later, calmly questioning if they could manage to carry the entire load. Vina questioned why they wouldn't be able to proceed if that was the only obstacle. This prompted the boy to recall the true nature of the world he was now in. In this world, he finds himself remarkably weak. She questioned what the problem was, but he remained completely silent. He explained his plan to transport everything to the capital and rent a stall in 3 days, asking Vina to return the following day. Night had already fallen by the time Eiffel arrived, and when she asked about his progress, Asuda confirmed that he had been successful. He thinks that with all the changes, you forgot he's not in Japan, so he didn't consider thieves or irrational violence. Confident, Eiffel says that, with her hunting and him at the stalls, there's nothing they won't be able to do together, which lifts the boy's spirits. And accepting it, he feels confident that, as a member of the Falkland, he'll make it work. Gauges pass, and Asuda is with his materials, almost begging for Vina to arrive. Soon, her voice is heard announcing that she's there, leaving the boy impressed and feeling more at ease. He thanks her for coming. The girl, wearing different clothes from what she usually wears, asks if he waited long. Noticing some details, Asuda asks what happened to her clothes. Vienna explains that women of the forest must cover as much skin as possible when they're in the capital. This makes the boy thoughtful, realizing that although it's more hidden than before, it's still more worrying. Suddenly, Vina remembers something and says that while she was talking about going to the shop, one more person wanted to come. Asuit is surprised to see Ruto, and the boy asks if there's a problem with him coming to serve as an escort. To tease him, Vina asks if he only came because he heard a suitor is opening a shop. Irritated, he defends himself, saying he came to help because he had free time. Besides that, Ruto says if Asuda is left alone, he might get attacked for being poor, making him an easy target. Although a bit offended at being called poor, Service Asuda agrees with him and then asks the hunter to help carry the supplies. Then they head to the stone capital, meaning to across the path over the bridge. Ruto and Vina are fine as if nothing happened, while the firekeeper collapses to the ground exhausted. She's okay. She tells them both they need to go to the commuter shop to get a tent. He's surprised to see the tent and Ruto asks if he's alright, saying he'll carry the tent to the chosen spot. Seeing the scene, this boy becomes thoughtful, feeling like he died and ended up in some unknown place. That he remembers his father and even though he can't speak to him. Asuda proudly says that even though it's small, he finally has his own shop. Hearing up again, the boy tells Ruto to grab everything and prepare for the shop's opening. As they drag the tent, the city dwellers stare and wonder if forest people are really planning to open a shop. This makes your suit a bit uncomfortable. Fawful eventually noticed their gazes and realized exactly why he was drawing so much attention. It was quite unusual for someone of his background to open a store. The Moys were startled to find that their rented storefront was situated quite a distance from the main street and the surrounding businesses. Asuda directed the group to begin the preparations. The boy and his companion watched closely as the theft took place. Despite the differing opinions, he remains fully committed to facing the challenge ahead. Asuda begins organizing the wooden boards and clarifies for Ruto whether 5 or 6 pieces should be moved to the back, while Vina confirms they need to keep the burger and gris separate. While asking for the pot, he mentioned that a box would also be helpful, and inquired if he could borrow one. At last, the shop was fully set up and looked quite impressive. Overjoyed, Asuda expressed his sincere gratitude to the two of them. Surveying his shop with a sense of pride, he felt satisfied with how it had turned out. This success wasn't his alone, as he never would have made it without the help of Epha and the others. However, as no one arrived, the boy began to feel a sense of unease. He speculates that an advertisement was involved, but Vina reminds him of the information they were previously given. Despite the act being strictly forbidden, he began preparing the burgers, but the moment he started, the situation took a turn. Vina turned her focus toward highlighting the specific points within the area. A man suddenly approached, much to Masuda's delight, as he initially mistook the stranger for a potential customer. The man turned away from the customer, which only served to frustrate the young girl. The boy felt a wave of suspicion, though he was also clearly a bit disappointed. Noticing the absence of the people who had opened the shop, the student realized he had made a critical mistake. He noted that even Ruto, while stationed as a guard, appeared visibly bored. This realization filled him with anxiety, as he knew he had only 10 days left to reach his goal. At this rate, it's clear the firehouse won't be able to hold out for much longer. Resolved to prevent that outcome, he spoke up with a question. He turned to Vina to request the remaining ingredients. As the effect began to spread, he reached out to draw another. The boys quickly drew everyone's attention. He was so deeply focused that he remained oblivious to his surroundings until Vina finally called out to him. A small crowd had gathered at the stall, and he stood among them. He was astonished to realize they had been lured in by the scent alone. However, one of them identifies the food as Jiba meat. Several people chose to walk away, realizing the situation wasn't what they had initially expected. Ultimately, they decided against the purchase, leaving the boy deeply discouraged. He felt that the end result would remain the same, regardless of how it was prepared. Jiba discovered that the only people willing to accept him were the forest folk. Vina reached out to him once more, her excitement noticeably higher than before. The hooded men inquired about Jiba, and Asuda provided a price while carefully observing the dark-skinned group. They made it a habit to travel in groups, always sporting attire that appeared quite suspicious. As he handed over the meat, he couldn't help but wonder if the man actually intended to eat it. He took a bite of the Jiba burger while the other man watched him intently. The morphed men began to congregate inside a suit of armor. He realized they weren't actually from Xenos, yet he still couldn't determine their true identities. He kept a watchful eye on his very first customer. He managed to finish the entire burger. The boy listened intently while conversing with his companion. A figure stood directly beside him. He found himself puzzled, unable to make sense of their reaction. The man caught him off guard by requesting 7 additional servings. While he remained frozen in place, it was Vina who finally caught his attention. The men demanded 7 more, leading the boy to realize that their earlier behavior was actually a form of evaluation. He served the burgers, which were priced at 14 red copper coins each. Vienna celebrated the modest success of selling 8 burgers. Suda was filled with excitement. Even though he wasn't entirely sure what was happening, he observed the crowd's reaction to his cooking. Out of every 10 attempts, they successfully managed to close 8 sales. Sugi stepped forward, declaring that he would be the one to manage the sell. Everything was attended to for the day, but time continued to march on. However, no one else ever arrived. Vienna notes that even though it's the middle of the lunch rush, no other customers have arrived. Its gaze immediately locked onto the 2 remaining burgers. He reflected on just how difficult it would be to make a sale. Lito suddenly made an appearance, prompting Asuda to remark that it was quite rare to see the boy without his usual cameo. The boy explained that his master was currently occupied with other pressing matters. As a result, he had no choice but to arrive alone. The firekeeper inquired about the reason for his arrival. Leto expressed his disappointment, but his focus quickly shifted as he suddenly remembered his mask. Gita Berger lay in bed, overwhelmed by piles of work as she broke down in tears. Retrieving some coins from his pouch, the boy inquired about the price. Seeing the food, Isuda grew excited, knowing he was now only 1 sale away from reaching his goal. However, she caught him off guard by requesting 1 more. The firekeeper was left speechless, convinced the boy was an angel as she watched him. Ultimately, the shop's first day of business concluded without any major incidents. Once they returned to the forest, Asuda thanked the pair for their assistance, and Venus reassured him that she would be ready to help whenever he needed her. He cautiously opened the door and stepped inside the house. He made his way back to Epha, who remained seated as he approached. With a smile, she remarked on how quickly he had moved. He assumed he was in the clear, seeing as the day had already come to an end. She inquired if he had successfully sold all 10 items, and the boy provided his response, that somehow they did. Epha tries to understand what he means by somehow. Then Asuda remembers that if it weren't for Kamua, he wouldn't have managed. He asks if the guys in white cloaks are from a northern province. The girl explains that there are probably people from the north of Shumu who came to see the shops and asks if something happened. Asuda explains that they bought his burgers and that they just came, bought them, and left. That makes her find the story interesting, leaving him confused. Then she explains that it's not that the Shimas hate Jibami, but it was probably the first time, idiot. With that, that as a person of the forest, she understands that it changed the way some people see their food. She says that's wonderful, making the Suda happy, and he thanks her. Ask why he's thanking her, but changing the subject, he just says he's going to start preparing dinner. But the incident began the next day. It's raining, and they try to protect their things. Mina says that when they arrived, it was really sunny, and Asuda just hoped it passes quickly, thinking maybe the Shima people won't come, but can't. Kamiwa appears and asks if he was expecting Liko again like the day before. Himself, Asuda says he didn't think about that. So the man jokes that maybe the boy was thinking of him instead, but the firekeeper says he wasn't. The man asks for 3 burgers, which makes Asuda curious to know who else is interested. But Camus says it's 2 for him and 1 for Lido, which leaves Asuda slightly disappointed, though he thinks he should have suspected that. He sells the 3 burgers, receiving 6 red copper coins as payment. Put it in with his purchase in hand. The man says he doesn't like when it rains a lot, and Asuda agrees. Somewhere else, the incident had already happened. On the ground, I fail, unconscious while the rain pours over her. In the city, it's still raining, and Suda says he hasn't seen anyone. Putting out the fire, he says they're going to close the shop. Vina is worried and says they only managed to sell free. And he have grieves, but says they also need to know when it's time to go home. Rudo appears and asks if he's leaving. His suitor then apologizes for forgetting about him and for making the boy carry everything back. However, Ruto says he doesn't mind that, but he doesn't want to cross the mountain while it's wet, thinking it's dangerous. Along the way, the hunter keeps warning Asuda about the precautions he needs to take, with Asuda in front, Vina in the middle, and Ruto in the back, and a line. The firekeeper talks about them going in that order. Then the hunter asks if he knows what happens if someone slips. Asuda thinks it's better than falling alone. He agrees with Rudo and says he'll do his best, while walking already, imagining they're close to home. He steps into the size of his foot. He never says footprints that scare him, and asked Ruro to come over to him. When the young man approaches, he says that one may have fallen and asks what they can do. Rudo says he'll take a look and ask the 2 of them not to move, and the firekeeper hopes nothing bad has happened. Careful Lady Yon Hunter goes down and immediately sees someone lying on the ground calling, for as soon as you drop everything and come over calmly. This makes the firekeeper's body freeze in fear, imagining the only reason why he would be called like this. That. Asuda walks over and finds I felt collapse on the ground. Rudo says it looks like she fainted. The firekeeper picks up a 5, and the young hunter asked him to wait for help from the townspeople. But to turn, he has no intention of leaving her behind. He then asked Rudo to please help him carry his family home. Seeing the situation, the young hunter helps him lift I-5, asking him to make sure he's holding her properly, asks Vina to assist them. Finally, the house, the injured Gur. Parole is laid down and Asuda thanks them, saying he will be in their debt. To lighten the mood, Ruto says he wants food next time, getting scolded by Vina, who tells him to take care of himself. Alone with the mission of taking care of Ifa, she starts by removing her wet fur coat and lighting a fire. Then he helps her dry off and prepares the bed. I follow up in her eyes and he asks if she's okay, but she only asks why she's at home, and the boy explains that she was soaked and fainted in the forest. Asuna asks more questions, wanting to know if her body hurts anywhere or if she feels cold. However, the only word she says is rain, as if trying to remember what happened. Worried, he asks if it was some kind of pain. And even though she says she's fine, Asuda asks her to lie down. Lying down, covered with tuba pelts, Ifo feels her body heavy. Stirring the pot, Asuda watches her and says he's heating soup, and she just needs to wait a little longer. She feels that her right shoulder is dislocated. The boy approaches her with the soup, asking if she can eat it, and she asked if he can feed her, and he confirmed, though he finds a request a little strange. But she doesn't say anything else, just sits up. Masuda helps her eat, which makes him a bit nervous, is thinking he's just taking care of her and nothing more. After finishing the soup, she asked if he can apply ointment to her shoulder, shocking the boy. She apologizes, saying she should have gotten the ointment herself. He rose to his feet to retrieve it. She reached out and handed the item over to him. His hands trembled as he carefully applied the ointment to her shoulder. Suda averted his gaze, struggling to understand the source of these unfamiliar feelings. Noticing her apparent discomfort, the concerned boy asked if she was running a fever, or if something else was wrong. She simply dismisses him by saying she is going to bed, leaving him standing there alone. He agrees that it will be a good idea, but she suddenly grabs him by the shirt and pulls him in. She maneuvered him onto the bed, forcing him to lie down by her side. Her close proximity only served to heighten the suitor's growing nervousness. She called out for her father, causing the boy to suddenly come to a realization. She is still only 17, the exact same age as him. She explained that she had faced her struggles in isolation and was now witnessing the loss of her family. Asuda turned toward her and, while gently holding her face, promised that he would always be by her side. He pledged to always remain by her side. The next morning arrived with the sun shining brightly overhead. Epha asked to accompany him, and seeing that her fever had finally broken, Asuda agreed. Though he reminded her that her injured arm would prevent her from hunting, she smiled and suggested she could serve as his bodyguard at Gino's instead. The boy advised her not to overexert herself just as they spotted the Ru's siblings in the distance. They were stunned by what they had discovered. As they drew closer, Asuda immediately offered an apology for troubling them once again. Concerned, Ruto asks if AI Fudge should be pushing herself so hard, and Vina agrees, reminding her of the injury on her arm. With her head bowed, the huntress apologized for the events of the previous day and thanked the group for bringing her back safely. When they requested an escort to Genos, she remained uneasy about the situation, but Epha insisted she could still protect them despite her injured arm. Ruto offers to handle all the heavy lifting just for a taste of the food, but Vina reminds him that Asuda has already compensated them. While in the city, Eiffel spotted a shop in the distance and curiously asked the boy if it belonged to him. He readily agreed and sought Vina's assistance, but she was more focused on questioning the origin of the meat. He explained that the rain had prevented him from preparing any hamburgers that day. Behind them lay the supplies they were forced to abandon due to the rain. Asuda decided to grind the meat and asked the girl to help by mashing it. Meanwhile, on the other side, while on guard duty, Ruto decided to take a short rest due to the lack of foot traffic, prompting Epha to ask if the area was truly that deserted. He explains that most people avoid this alley, noting that only those with a specific purpose venture here, a point she immediately understands. She wonders if the aroma of the food might attract attention, and Ruto agrees with her concern. A man suddenly appeared, shouting about the complete absence of customers. Immediately on guard, Eiffel fires a swift shot to ensure Asuda's safety. Continuing to shout, the man insisted he only sold the goods because Kami told him to, questioning why someone in a suit was handling his vegetables. When Epha inquired about the man's identity, Ruto explained that he was the proprietor of the vegetable shop. She continued on her way, showing no sign of stopping even as the boy called out to her. She approaches him directly to ask if he's ever had a hamburger, insisting that he shouldn't judge it until he's actually tried one. This sparked a faint sense of concern that things might actually turn out poorly. Addressing her as Forrest's sister, the man was met with the girl's inquiry regarding what he wanted. He caught her off guard, however, when he finally expressed his gratitude for her saving his daughter. This left him completely fused. She claimed to have no idea what he meant, prompting the man to reveal that he had brought his daughter along. He calls out for little terror, but the huntress remains confused, insisting she has no memory of what he's talking about. The little girl says a drunk man was bothering her. Once the young woman departs, Epha realizes the visitor must have belonged to the Sun Clan, as they are the only ones known to drink in Genos. She confirmed that something similar had indeed taken place, and assured him that his gratitude had been fully received. Having heard that the hamburgers were made with jib and meat, the man ordered 2 so he and his daughter could sample them. Sui is left feeling confused and asks if this is truly all right, while the man explains that he simply wants to taste the dish his vegetables are being used for. The firekeeper directed Vina to place Tino atop the potion, and as she followed the instruction. As he observed the events, the man noted that at this rate, he wouldn't even get a taste of Tino. Growing curious about the meal being prepared, he noted that it didn't look like meat at all. He found the situation even more peculiar when he noticed the meat resting on top of Tino. Despite having the burgers ready to serve, the suitor remained visibly stunned. The man inquired if the price was indeed 4 red copper coins. Tara was the first to step forward and put it to the test. Her actions left her father feeling quite intrigued. She hurried over to Ifei and began to speak. The flavor turned out to be genuinely delicious. As he looked on, the man noticed his typically reserved daughter was chatting away quite animatedly. The huntress offered a faint smile, glad to see that she had enjoyed it. Determined to keep up, the man finished the meat in a hurry, noting its incredible tenderness and rich flavor to Asuda. Ultimately, the situation regarding Jibates turned out to be far from negative. Out of curiosity inquires whether Asuri using a different meat would yield a different result, or if the boy is restricted solely to using Jiba. Asuda maintained that his burger wasn't bad, explaining that he simply wanted more people to recognize the quality of Jiba meat. Despite his insistence on selling only that specific meat, he realized his plan wasn't working out as well as he'd hoped. However, he couldn't reveal the truth in front of Epha, so he promised to handle the matter personally. He presented several other vegetables that would complement Jiba perfectly. He pushed himself to the limit, silently hoping his daughter was witnessing the full extent of his resolve. However, as he turns his back, he realizes the girl has already vanished. He continued to gaze at Epha, insisting that the blame rested entirely on her. Asuda noted how helpful this would be before heading off to collect them. While Ter waved a cheerful goodbye, Epha couldn't help but notice a trace of sadness in the man's eyes. They shifted their focus to the vegetables, examining them closely. She expressed her deep affection for her mother, mentioning that there were many feelings she had never been able to voice. Asura asked to sample a few, and the man agreed, though he cautioned him that some possessed an incredibly strong flavor. Unfortunately, it was already too late, as Asura had bitten into a vegetable that immediately brought tears to his eyes. The boy compared the flavor to a radish, noting how the sharp aroma and pungent taste hit his senses immediately. While the man searched for Miami, Vienna mentioned to the boy that she caught a pleasant scent nearby. The vendor explained that produce with such a pungent aroma shouldn't be eaten raw, then asked if he would like to try something else instead. Asuda continued to hold the vegetable in his mouth, prompting the man to ask if he realized he could simply spit it out. Refusing the offer, he swallowed it instead, believing it might inspire him to create a brand new dish. After his recent attempt, the boy found himself preoccupied with thoughts of Maya, even as a man quickly asked him if his vegetables were the best. Seizing the chance to change the subject, he asked Asuda exactly how many Mayamu he required. Once Asuda decided on the quantity, the man provided him with the price. Once their business concluded, he mentioned that he was heading out to gather several others. As Asuda surveys his remaining ingredients, he considers his options for the leftovers while noting that the vegetable shop owner he's dealing with is remarkably skilled. Piqued by curiosity, Asuda believed that professional insight into vegetables would help him develop a brand new menu. Vina questions his actions, prompting the boy to explain his current situation. He carefully considered the various ingredients required for the upcoming menu. Filled with excitement, she asked if he was planning to improvise a new dish. Finding the experience enjoyable, she asked if she could lend a hand. In agreement, Masuda instructed her to begin searching for the necessary ingredients. He explained that using fruit wine during the preparation would infuse the meat with a distinct aroma. Intrigued, Vina asks if that's where the flavor comes from, but the boy explains it's simply all they have to work with for now. He also elaborated on the significance of the mineral salt and pico. He utilized the leaf, noting that it felt remarkably similar to the ingredients he typically uses for grilled meat. He attempted to convince them to consume the meat. He then proposed an alternative approach. Intrigued, he took a closer look at the meat. He inquired if he intended to slice it into thin pieces. The boy then begins to explain the reality of the situation. This method made it much easier to eat, while the addition of salt and pico served to intensify the flavor. As the vegetable vendor arrived, he was promptly called over by one of the suitors. The man then questioned the boy, asking if he was aware that his name was Dora. After expressing his gratitude, he returned with an even greater supply of mamu. Once he finished slicing the vegetables, he asked Vina to light the fire. The firekeeper added fruit wine and several slices to the mixture. After letting the mixture simmer, Mayamu adds another splash of the drink to the pot. With a smile, Dora points out that the food's aroma is already filling the air, catching even Vina's attention. Shortly after, Asuna added the thinly sliced Cuba meat to the dish. The lingering aroma still enveloped the two of them. Upon smelling the food, the man noted that the aroma was enough to stir anyone's appetite. Jiba's presence in Miami created a unique dynamic. The phenomenon quickly began to spread throughout the entire city. Remaining on guard, Ruto complains about his hunger, while the woman notes that she never expected him to pull off such a feat in such a cramped stall. Chef Asuda directed Vina to prepare a potent roast infused with tino leaves. Seeking reassurance that she was on the right track, she asked the boy for his opinion on her progress. After giving her his approval, he envisions the pointen with tino leaves as a convenient dish that can be enjoyed while on the move. Next, he carefully placed the kuf jiba meat on top of the pointen. He then finished the dish by adding the sauce on top. Next, he wraps the dough around the meat, explaining that this prevents the filling from falling out. And that was the manner in which Jiba and Miami were finally served. Vina expressed her excitement over the quality, while Dora suggested that since he had provided the vegetables, he should be their very first customer. The suitor attempted to play it off, insisting that the entire situation was merely a test. Insisting on paying, the man expressed his desire to try it for himself. Left with no other choice, the boy handed over the item and accepted his payment of 2 red copper coins. Dora takes a bite of the food, and no misses the flavors like the heat of the mayamu and the meat with a pinch of salt. While he eats, the group of couldn't men watches. Asuda asks if they want, "You have a burgers," but one of them points. The pot of sliced jiba. The putted man asks for jiba with mayamu for just one, and Asuna asked Vina to prepare another. Meanwhile, Dora says he'll be back later to buy one for Tara and ask them to save some for them. But the young boy thinks he's actually trying to run away. With the food ready, Asuna hands it over while Vina is the one who takes the payment. The boy watches as the man eats and turns to whisper to the others, making the firekeeper curious. Making a hand signal, the man then asks for 6 mayamu and 7 jima burgers. This impresses Asuda, who realizes that with this sale and Doris is already made up for the losses from the rainy day. Excited, the boy teams up with Vina to make more. Smiling, Eiffel watches the scene, while Ruto complains that he wants food. As soon as everything's is ready, he hands it over to the hooded men. Asuda sighs in relief for having sold all the meat. Then he begins preparing what's left for Dora and Tara in common, that he doesn't know what time they'll be back. Ruto offers to go ask and says that since Epha is on guard, and it's not hard being there with the smell, he'll take care of it. As he gets ready to go, the suitor calls out to him and that when he comes back he'll make a Jiba burger for him. More cheerful, and Asuda finds his bright smile beautiful. Vino apologizes for her brother, but the boy says it's nothing, he's the one being helped. Asuda says that selling meat this way was thanks to them, and that he's grateful to the people of the forest, and even to those from Janos. That makes Vima agree and say she's also grateful to him. It surprises the boy, but she simply says she's going to cut Tino leaves. While walking through the city, Ruta passes by a group talking about a shop. This makes the boy pay attention to what they might be plotting about Asuda's shop. The woman says there is no doubt, and it's definitely coming from the shop. Alert! Ruto decides to follow them. The suit is cooking and says the burger is ready, missing only the Miami when Vina alerts him about a possible customer. With arms crossed and staring at them, the woman looks a bit irritated, which makes them uncomfortable, thinking they might be planning something bad for Asuda's shop. Yamruto already prepares to grab his sword. Suddenly the woman starts talking and says she followed the smell to that place and found that forest people had opened a shop. And the man right behind her asks if it's Jibami. This makes the woman even more irritated, and she says she's going to the vegetable store. However, one of the men says they came from far away and that he can't trust her senses. He says it's his fault, and the other agrees, asking Yumi to take responsibility, leaving her confused about what they mean. They push her forward, saying she should try it, but the woman resists, saying that jibamit is disgusting. Asuna watches this, not liking it, even if the forest people don't have a great reputation. The boy then says that if she's going to complain just based on appearance, she should at least try one of the products. That shocks the woman with his boldness, and one of the men says even the shopkeeper thinks the same. Asura knows what he did wasn't great, but he didn't open his shop to provoke anyone. Then she asks for a bit of what he's making. The boy says he'll prepare my amu. Yumi's reaction is horror, and one of the men calls her unlucky. A suit of hands for the rat meat, and says it costs 2 red bronze coins. She pays, clearly not happy to be spending money on it. The boy watches her and thinks that even though she came because of the smell, if she would just take a bite. After thinking for a bit, Yumi tries to meet, making a suit of happy. One of them asks what she thought, and she looks even more irritated. She tells them to leave and asks if any of them want the meat because she doesn't. That upsets Asuda, who watches everything. Even they reject and meet and follow the angry woman. Wiener and Eiffel. I'll look at the boy worried. Then Rudo and Dora return with the man asking about the Mayamu. Smiling again, the boy hands over the food, for him and his daughter, Tara. Amanda misses some things wrong with Asuda and asks if there's a problem, since he didn't sound very confident when he mentioned the Mayamu. At first he seems disappointed, but quickly changing. His mood? The boy says he's just excited about how to cook it. From her spot on guard duty, Eiffel looks on proudly. Curious, Dora asks if he wants to improve the cooked Miami, and says he thinks the food is very good. Asuda thanks him, saying there's still a little left, and that he also needs to close the shop. A far-ready spot cameo running in a hurry. He says he almost didn't make it in time, but Asuda says they're already closed. Once more, Kamiwa insists he made it in time, and greeting Dora, he asks if he managed it. The man says he smells ma'am and asks Asuda if it's a new menu item, and the boy confirms, saying they already packed everything up. That leaves Cameo disappointed, but Dora offers the one meant for his daughter, Tara. He looks at the new dish and says as soon as it doesn't change the kiba meat much. Camus says he'll come back the next day, and ask him to say one for him. The suitor asks if he's going to eat it all by himself. The man disagrees and then starts talking confusingly about Lido, not being great with strong foods even when trying to get rid of the smell. The man leaves saying goodbye and the boy is left confused. Vina appears and asks if something happened, and Asuda says no, just tells her to put everything away. The vendor Doro also says goodbye, heading off to take food to his daughter. As they walk, Asuna thanks everyone for their hard work, but it's Vina who notices Epha acting strangely and says she seems tired. The huntress says she was just distracted, but she thinks to herself that she couldn't sleep because of the smell of food and was starving. She can't say that to the others, and wonders if Asuade is going to sell what he made the night before. They set up the shop and Rudo looks curiously at a box that was brought and asks what it is. Opening it, Asuda says it's the Jiba meat he left marinating in Miami sauce overnight. There's no time to say anything else before Dora rides excitedly, and Asuna asks if it's the vegetable she ordered. The boy apologizes for making him do it. Dora also introduces Tara and says the girl really liked the food and wanted to see how the Jiba with Mayumu is made. The girl's eyes shine as her father speaks, and this makes us so happy. From afar, Yumi watches and wonders why people from Janos would be enjoying themselves at a barbarian stall. Irritated and accused, using them as being pressured, she continued on, making her way past Dora. She mentions his latest attempt to sell items through a suitor, but the boy simply smiles, expressing how glad he is that she showed up. Yumi attempts to voice a rebuttal. Tara catches her attention and immediately speaks up in defense, suggesting she take a much closer look at the situation. He remained stubborn, refusing to acknowledge any of it. She ultimately decided to stay, simply because the young girl had asked her to. As the fight was about to begin, he simply asked her to stand back and watch. He carefully poured a small amount of fruit wine over the top. The Juba slices were placed within the pot. Intrigued, Harris noted that there had been others present just the day before. The thin slices of meat were missing this time, yet she could still smell the aroma wafting from the pot. Stunned by the discovery, the woman realized this was the exact scent responsible for drawing people in. Presenting the bowl of meat, Asud explains that he marinated it in Miami sauce overnight. Tara finally understood the reason behind the enticing scent. He explained that he adds the remaining sauce afterward, stirring the mixture until the ingredients are fully combined. The flavors have now thoroughly melded together. He was thrilled to see the cooked meat finally prepared and neatly wrapped. While the woman bathed them, Dora requested one for both himself and Tara. As Yumi drew near, Asura's question about whether she wanted one only served to irritate her. She looks back at him, questioning the reasoning behind his request. He simply wanted her to experience the flavor for herself. This turn of events left her questioning Asura's true motives. Assuming the outcome would be no different than before, she went ahead and requested one. He handed the item over to her, accompanied by his 2 current customers. She was holding what appeared to be a pseudo-watch. Upon finishing, she finally understood the reason behind her initial distaste. He inquired about her thoughts, and she confirmed that he met all the necessary requirements. She simply remarked that the situation wasn't quite as bad as she had initially feared. He produced 2 coins to settle the payment. Asuda declined the offer, explaining that he had only wanted to give it a try. She admitted that her previous claim, that eating it was a provocation, was a mistake and offered an apology. The boy had a faint recollection of hearing something similar. Ignoring the ongoing dispute, the woman turned and walked away. Asuda offered her a respectful word of thanks. She took pride in the fact that she was the very first customer he had ever served. He managed to earn her trust despite being a complete stranger to her. Vina had been silently observing the entire situation as it unfolded. She questioned the reason for his laughter, admitting that she hadn't expected the woman to make another appearance. To their surprise, Tara praised the dish for its bold and delicious flavor, noting that she would be happy eating the meat all on its own. Her father countered by reminding her that the TNO they had sold was also of excellent quality. Watching closely, Asuda realized that even the city's longtime residents had their own unique preferences. At last, Kamiwa arrived with a smile, explaining that he had only come for the food. The boy expressed his gratitude for the events of the previous day, but the man seemed completely puzzled by his words. Asuda pondered how others typically praised his cooking, realizing he was finally receiving a truly honest critique. Dorotel mentions that the food is even more delicious than expected, further fueling his appetite. With the shop finally staffed and a steady stream of customers arriving, everyone found themselves busier than ever before. There are moments when Asuda feels as though he's simply living in a dream. As she accepts the payment, Vina warns him about the hooded figures from Shumu closing in on them. Kamua, Dora, and Tara all shared their final farewells before parting ways. As they approach, Asuda moves to take their order, only to be immediately caught off guard. However, one of the men spoke up, insisting that they only wanted to have a conversation. He observed them silently from a distance. He was struck by a peculiar sensation, realizing that something about the situation felt different. Shortly after, her suit finally manifested. They then spoke up, stating that a serious conversation was necessary. Filled with concern, Epha asked for an explanation of what had transpired. Feeling slightly awkward, the boy explained the request put forth by the Shingu people. She brandished a knife toward her suitor. Her concern only grew, prompting her to question their actions, while he attempted to explain that no attack had actually occurred. This persisted despite the fact that one of them was armed with a knife. In reality, the offering was simply a way for them to showcase their culinary tools. He made his way to the shop managed by the Shuman. He presented the silver pots, catching the boy completely by surprise. He surveyed the diverse range of goods available for purchase. Asuda felt it would have been beneficial if Ruto had joined them, but he had remained behind to look after the shop. Epha then chimed in, asking for clarification on what their discussion was about. She questioned why she had been brought along, prompting the boy to explain the situation. The chumarol knife proved to be surprisingly effective at slicing through the vegetables. She then asked him what it was he wanted to tell her. Keeping his gaze lowered, Asuda suggested using their hard-earned money to purchase some utensils. She simply gave him the green light to proceed. Asuda was taken aback, having assumed he needed the family head's approval. But Epha clarified that since he earned the money himself, he was free to use it as he pleased. The boy excitedly hurried over to inspect the utensils, much to the girl's relief now that she understood the true direction of their conversation. She proceeded to show him even more. Meanwhile, I figured the process would take quite some time. While Epha found the decorations underwhelming, Vina was captivated by a stunning necklace. The huntress refused to even touch the ornaments, leading Vina to feel it was a shame that she had no interest in such things. After the two part ways, Essie eventually returns with a full bag and meets him once more. Says you bought a lot, but the boy replies that they're just big, feeling a little awkward. The boy says you bought something for her, and Frey says that's against the customs of the forest people, so you just ask her to at least take a look. He pulls out a necklace from his pocket, and the girl says that if it's just that, it's fine since it won't interfere with hunting. Asuda says he's not a hunter, so he can't offer a trophy, but he wanted to give something like a charm. Fez eyes sparkle, and she takes the necklace, saying she'll accept it, which makes the boy happy. Because of her injured shoulder, she says she can't put it on, so the firekeeper helps her. He asks if she likes it, and the girl confirms, and as they walk by, Vina notices the beautiful necklace. That makes Vina happy, and the mana asks if she also wants something, which she replies that when she comes back she buy lots of things. When they return to the shop, Rudolph had already eaten all 10 burgers, and Asuda thinks he should have made fewer. Putting on his headband, the chef declares they'll give it there all before it gets dark, and they prepare for more sales. Suda isn't in bed. She goes outside where the boy is sitting and watching the sky. Worried, she asks if he can't sleep, but Asuda says that's not the problem. He's just thinking it's a waste, which confuses her. He says they only thought about making money, but they were surprised by the people they met and everything that happened. Steven more cheerful. He says he wants to spend his days like this. Then Epha sits down, leaning on him and says she's excited for tomorrow and time pass as usual. Asuda says they're going to close the shop and need to take down the sign. He thanks Rudo for the help and asks the boy to carry the things while he goes to pay the fee. The young hunter looks sad, and Asuda asks him not to make a crying face. Along with iFile, as they have enough money. All they need to do is negotiate. Then the two better see cameo. The man receives the payment for the 10-day rental and asks the pseudo wants to ask him something. The boy nods and says he wants to request something. Camus says it depends on what it is, and the boy asks to rent the shop for a little longer. The man wants to know the reason and asks if it's because he realized he can profit from selling Give Me. Asuda replies that in part yes, but he also wants to see a new world. He says that in the beginning, he just wanted to run his shop, but after meeting new people, he realized he wants many people to eat his food. Bon Camus, as he figured, was the reason and tells him to keep using the shop. He'll speak with the owner. This surprises Asuda and the man says he's got everything in hand. I felt watching everything ask the boy if that's not great and even agreeing. He thinks that for some reason he can't feel happy. She says she's really happy that she get to keep eating his food. Asuda meets up with Rudo, who asks if they already have to go back to work. And Vina shows up saying her brother was just being stubborn, and that when the stall was returned, his eyes were red. That annoys the boy, who just asks if he really has to go to Genus again. And with that answer, he just walks away. The stall is opened again, making everyone happy. Yumi shows up saying she didn't see the shot the day before and that she was surprised. And Asuna then says she came on purpose to check it out. The woman's cheerful, for a Miami stew with Chiba me. And so the peaceful days returned. From a distance, some people observe the stall, realizing the smell of Jiba is coming from there. While cooking, Asuda says it feels like the ground is shaking, and Vina agrees, saying it's getting closer. A man comes running and says he wants all the jibamit. Surprised, Asuda asks if he's talking to him. The man shows his sack of coins, and when Asuda turns to speak with Vina, her reaction is not good. Looking at their guards, they have the same reaction, and Asuda realizes this is Midas's son, who once attacked Epha and got beaten by her. The members had already spotted the man, but they maintained their composure since he was a paying customer. He views cooking purely as a means to earn money. Asuda observed the man's gluttonous eating habits, a display that would typically bring him a sense of satisfaction. However, this time the encounter felt much more like a genuine battle. He instructed Vina to distribute thin strips of Tino across a wide area. By ensuring Mida returned home satisfied, they could avoid any potential conflict. However, she stated that Tino was no longer with them. Furthermore, they had also completely run out of their supply of Cuba meat. He handed over the Miami stew, which featured an extra serving of Jiba meat. The moment he accepted the offering, Mita proceeded to devour both the food and the boy. Their expectations were finally coming to fruition. However, when the man requested more, Asuda explained they were sold out and offered to return his remaining coins. Refusing to accept the situation, Mita broke down in tears and pleaded for more. Someone soon appeared, asking if the shop owners could step in since he was no longer able to fulfill the requests himself. Imiru explains that there is absolutely nothing they can do about the situation. The stout man remarked that there was a truly shameless individual among them. They conspired to deceive their brother and spread false information. Additionally, she calls upon the Ru's siblings for assistance. She was judged for refusing to obey her family's demands, but Vina ultimately stepped in to prevent Runo from intervening. Yamiru offered a smile, labeling them as unpleasant individuals. Telling them to stop crying, Mana mentioned his hunger while fixing them with a frightening gaze as she began to explain the conditions. Returning home in his current state would surely lead to a harsh punishment. Visibly irritated, Asuda spoke up to ask. Not only were they prone to insulting others, but they were even willing to cause harm to their own family. Ymira sarcastically remarked on how unpleasant his behavior had become. He then directed his questions toward the firekeeper of the room. Unfortunately, he found it impossible to achieve that same result with the son. She then turned her attention toward the leader of the Fat clan. She asked for her opinion, emphasizing that there wouldn't be a third opportunity. The woman challenged him, questioning whether he truly intended to turn her down. Asura inquired about the specific conditions, noting that they couldn't accept the deal otherwise, and questioned if it was as simple as preparing a meal. Ymira smiled, praising his sharp intellect while explaining that a gathering of family heads was about to take place at the Ru clan. She then disclosed that the meal was intended for 70 people, despite the payment only covering the cost of 40 gibas. This left him questioning how he would acquire such a large supply of meat, and if his family could manage the burden alone, while the woman further provoked him by noting he looked like he had something to ask. If he found himself confused, he could always turn to the Ru family for clarification. While consulting with the clan, Domna remarks that the son has finally reached them. The truth behind Yamiru's situation is soon explained. He issued the orders to begin preparations for the upcoming assembly of the family leaders. Gazarin mentions that the meeting is fast approaching, causing the boy to worry about the complications it might bring. Dismissing the leaders' frequent meetings as routine, the young man admitted his real concern was the possibility of the Sun family contacting Asuda. Recalling the shop's initial testing phase, the boy realized he hadn't seen any forest folk at the time, which led him to believe the people of Genos simply didn't accept them. Asuda began to consider whether there was a common thread linking all of these events together. She requested permission while wearing a warm and pleasant smile. Stepping into the meeting room, Grandma Juba remarked that it had been quite some time since she last saw Falkland. Concerned for the elderly woman, they asked if she was alone, but she explained that Ramad was already accompanying her. Juba mentioned receiving word that the Sun family was stirring up trouble for them within the city. Then Ruto raises his hand, saying they caused trouble for him too. Donda says that although the Sun irritate him, he won't do anything about what happened in the city. He just decided to help on his own without involving others. But Juba says that while that makes sense, she's referring to the contract made 80 years ago. The old lady speaks about the prohibition of harvesting the blessings of the forest, the beginning of Juba hunting, and how with the end of trade in the city some families died. Sad. The lady says that's why it hurts her to see the forest people suffer at the hands of the city folk. Looking at the lady like that, as soon as says she's not the only one being tormented, and that because the trade ended, the new encounters happened. The boy says he got mad at you. Yeah, Maru, but that has nothing to do with the past. Determined, he says he wants to put an end to the Sun on his own will. But Eiffel warns that this will affect the Ru, so if you shouldn't go picking fights and that they should face things their own way. Leader Donda offers his men to carry the ingredients as well as some women to help him. Finally, at the day of the family heads meeting arrives. Rudo says they're arriving, and asks if a suit is okay. And he says yes, when they arrive they are. Readed by Tae-sun. Walking through the place as soon as senses a gloomy atmosphere. They place the ingredients in the designated spot and a cabin in search of the stove. Inside you find some women, with not so happy expressions. He introduces himself and, when he tries to ask a favor, they ignore him. Touching his shoulder, Epha asked him to pull himself together and not let it get to him. Vina and Rina also show up, showing support for him. Putting on his chef's scarf, he ends the preparation. Other women tries to grab the ladle and although Reina tries to warn her it's stuck, it's too late, and the hot broth spills on her. The woman falls to the ground injured and Reina calls for help, but all the others ignore her. Bino goes to help and suggests taking the girl to the river and rinsing her with water. Asuda calls out, and they say they're coming on him and leave with the injured girl. Thanks for their instructions. Kitchen's going well, but what worries us is the spilled food, so they need to make up the same amount. If not much else to do, the boy says he plans to pay for the ingredients they can provide. The women seem confused, which surprises Asuda since it's their job to take care of the kitchen. A little irritated, he pleased to know where the ingredients are, but then this shows up at the worst possible time. This makes the boy worry that he might want to come in and eat whatever he wants, but he sees this as a chance. Excited, Maida asks for the food he ate once at the stall, and Asuda says he can't make it because they need ingredients. And with a good act, he asked the man to take him to the pantry. Maida takes the boy and says he was told not to be there, but since he's with the cook, it should be fine. This reassures Asuna since Maida doesn't find it strange. As soon as they spot the warehouse, Maida points and Asuda is pleased to see the place is even bigger than the ruse. He becomes hopeful about recovering what was lost in the accident. However, when they try to open it, they discover it's locked, which makes MITA irritated. Asura asks him to stop to avoid breaking it and says that since it's used every day, shouldn't be locked. Curious, the boy asks if the dinner in the previous night was normal. However, Midas says he always eats in the city. This makes us to think about impossible, possibly being the only one who can afford that. Worried, the man asks if, without opening it, you won't be able to cook. But Asuna wants to stay focused on the dinner. As they try to push the door, Tyson shows up and asks what they're doing at the warehouse. Trying to explain, Asuda says something unexpected happened and he lost the ingredients, so the man accuses him of trying to steal. In his defense, the boy says he'll pay and asks to be given some. Being rude, the man tells him not to act like a thief and say, as he should have asked a family member, ignoring Midas's presence. A bit impatient, Asuda says he asked the cooks and they ignored him, and Tai says they didn't find him trustworthy. Bruto appears, asking what he's doing, leaving the firekeeper worried something might happen. Tivon says that since the Ru are there, there's no reason for the son to give ingredients. The man then scolds Maida, saying he was forbidden from being there. Asuda thanks Rudo and asks why he came. Then the young hunter says he saw Vina and Reina and came to see if something was going on. Asuda says this time he's just missing ingredients. Rugo says he'll go to the city to buy everything he needs and asks him to be quick. As soon as his suitor tries to speak, he tells him to take it easy so he doesn't forget anything. With the full list, the boy runs off to buy everything in time. As soon as he leaves, the girls return. With everyone's help, the preparations for the family gathering continued. The family heads are gathering. Vina says that she and the others are heading back and asks Asuding if he's staying. Like he says, the Sun Clan will only pay him after the meeting, and Vina reminds him they never pay in advance. Then Reina suggests they could leave the payment with IFAS and she'll be at the meeting, which makes him suspect they want a suitor to stay alone. The girls then ask him to be careful. Suspicious, Asuda realizes something's not right about the warehouse. It runs to where the meeting is taking place, intending to listen in a bit. The cheese is receded while eating, and one of them says the taste of the food is good enough to sell in the city. Asura thinks it would be the same if they were eating in the city, and then something catches his attention and he peeks again. Another cheek says that small clans like theirs don't have the capacity to do something like that. He says the Sun Clan has the money needed for it, and smaller clans are too busy hunting gibbous. Ifo agrees and says not all families get enough, and that's why the Sun should share their wealth. That makes them laugh, saying it's funny to hear that from a family that sells Jiba in the city. And another one says that if she insists so much, she should volunteer to give them the meat. Asuda thinks that no matter the world, the conflict between rich and poor never disappears. Either way, he feels like everything is going smoothly and walks away. He remembers Mida and regrets having left him behind, so he decides to look for him to apologize for causing trouble. While locking at some point, he runs into your mirror, who asks what he's doing walking around the houses. The boy explains he'll only get paid at the end of the meeting, and she offers to pay him herself. Thoughtfully, she points to a house and asks him to wait there while she prepares the money, using the excuse that it's not good to hand over money in the street. But as soon as he stays sharp, remembering what Rihanna said about isolating him to use as a hostage against Epha or as a threat to him. Entering the house, the boy thinks that at least she'll be fine since Donda wouldn't let anything happen to her. In the end, the meeting, nowhere since Zoro's son wouldn't take any risks. On purpose, Degasson bumps into Aoife's injured shoulder, making her fall to the ground in pain. Smiling, he says he remembers she's hurt and then grabs her shoulder tightly, saying he'll take her to treat the pain. He pins Ife against the wall of the house and says he's willing to forget everything that happened if she agrees to the marriage. Meanwhile, the door of the house Asuda is in opens, someone enters and complains that it's completely dark and the boy says it's fine like that. By the light of a candle, Miro appears completely naked and asks if he's ready for the wedding ceremony. She asks if his heart is ready. Ymir asks if he's so shocked he can't even speak. The one is surprised and wonders if he was always that big. With his shirt covering his face, Asuda replies that he's just surprised. That confuses her, and the boy says she tried the same thing before. Amir is even more confused about what he means, and with his head covered, she realizes he's hiding. He then asks if she's naked, and if looking at her would mean he has to marry her, or else he might lose his eyes. The boy says he knows that even without seeing. Finding it funny, the woman laughs him an idiot and says she's still interested anyway. Still with his head covered, Asuda tries to find the way out of the house even though he doesn't know if she's still there. The door opens, and when he puts out his hand, he feels someone's body and gets worried about what part he's touching. Then Meta asks what he's doing, and happy to see the man, Asuda pulls the shirt off his head. He apologizes for not keeping his promise, but Meta says to forget it. Afraid that Ymira might still be around, Asuda asks him to stay nearby. A little farther away, Tae asks the woman if she succeeded, but she replies that his plan completely failed. That makes him irritated by the ass. If she let anyone approach the warehouse and Yamari says no. Meanwhile, Asuda becomes thoughtful, sensing something is wrong with the warehouse, and assumes the meeting must be over since T is there. At the same time, IFED takes the perfect opportunity to strike Diga-sun, who falls to the ground with just one kick. Donda appears and says he was looking for her, thinking she might have had trouble with the sun, but apparently, she didn't need to worry. But she says it might have been because Diga saw him and let his guard down, which allowed her to attack. Because of this, Donna says the Suns must have planned something involving the meeting, and she becomes concerned for Asuda. They find the boy with Meta, who were looking for her. Asuda says it's good to see her safe while she wants to know why he's with Mita. The boy explains that Mita helped him with the ingredients even after they were kicked out. Still suspicious, Asuda says they've been keeping members of other clans away from the warehouse, which is strange, if not outright unusual for them. Epha also finds it suspicious that Nadium the cook was allowed to enter. Donda then decides to check out the Sun's warehouse, and Neda says they'll get angry, but he doesn't care. Suddenly, Zoro's son appears, complaining that they're causing trouble in another family's territory, and No ID calls everyone fools, including Maida. But Donna asks why he's interfering with other clan leaders over a warehouse. The Ru leader gives a signal, and the other three run off. Dama steps in, blocking Zoro from chasing after them. The man demands he move out of the way, but the Ru leader says he just wants an explanation. Epha asks if the door was locked and tells him to be careful and not bite his tongue while talking. The boy, who's being carried by Myra, says yes, and that there was no key nearby. The girl thinks this whole situation is a mystery. On the way they run into Dan Rudum, who explains he was hungry and couldn't sleep, which is why he's there. Finding it strange that Asuda is being carried, he asks if the boy is going to become an ingredient. Asura explains they're going to the warehouse, and since he's slow, he's being carried. This excites Dan, who decides to join them, and Epha just asks him not to make noise. Even the Rudum chief is impressed by the size of the warehouse. Turning to Asuda, he asks if the boy can make him something using sun meat. Asuda agrees and says they need to open it first. Suddenly, Tai's son appears, telling them not to approach the warehouse, and even yells at Maida, who trembles in fear while holding on to Asuda. Seeing his fear in the boy, regrets not being able to do more, though they're so close to uncovering the secret. But Dan, annoyed, tells him to shut up the demands to eat you for me. Taking the chance, Asura asks Maida not to do anything and tries to open the door himself. Smiling, the boy says he has to fulfill the requests of customers who want his food, including him. She demands that Dan get out of her way, but the Rudum leader dares her to try. Then Epha offers to help, but Danda shows up saying he dealt with Zura's son. He then shows the man unconscious and says he suddenly passed out. Maida and Asuda struggle to open the door, when suddenly someone asks them not to. Even Tag gets scared of Zatsu's son, and Dan asks if she wasn't supposed to be in bed. The strange old man seems angry and tells them not to open the door. Finding him very odd, Dom tells a student to just open the door already, while Maida, terrified, apologizes. To help, Dan says he'll handle the old man. Stretching, Asuda says he'll use all his strength, and even though Maida thinks it's dangerous, the boy says he has to do it anyway. Thinking he can't do that with such a fragile body, might it protect the boy by throwing himself at the door? Warehouse is empty, and Asuda finds the box inside suspicious. He asked Maida for help to grab the box. While Dan and Donda struggle with the old Zatsu, Fight enters to check if Asuda is okay. With the box open, Asuna reveals that what they were hiding was the blessings of the mountains. Analyzing the place, Epha notices that a bar on the inside was blocking the door. She sees that there was nothing inside the box and notices a secret passage meant for the members. The old man starts shouting, saying they touched the forbidden blessing, and not only that, they lived recklessly with money without hunting Jiba. Still in despair, he says they broke the rules. Dan and Donda look at each other, but his father declares that the Sun family is finished. Then Yamuri appears and thanks them for having ended everything. Many days have passed since the troubling meeting of the Sun family. Asuda and I fought talk with Chibaru, and she says she understood what happened with the Sun family. They came at the lady's request to know everything that happened, even though Donda had told her. The lady asks how that's her son was, and assault. Suda imagines he is the old man who was shouting. Epha asks if the reason they were called is because she wanted to know something else. Jiba asks if she noticed. The girl says she mentioned the contract and thought that maybe she was worried the Sun family was broken. The lady confirms and says she talked with Zatsu about the contract a long time ago. Going back to his slightly distant past, a younger Jiba looks at a tree and asks if it's not strange to have so many fruits in the forest and not be allowed to pick them. Young Zatsu appears and says they can't do anything because of a contract that allows them only to hunt the dangerous Jibas. She was worried about his injury, but the boy steps away and says he's just not used to hunting yet. Confident, the boy says they need to become stronger to hunt gibbous, because they must protect the forest people's future. And smiling, the girl says he's right. Back to the present, Grandma Jubis says that's what he said and that she wanted to know what he is doing now. She thinks about the son he wanted to protect, who awaited judgment and followed their orders. To know more about him from Yamari, who tried to reveal his evil deeds. Another one she thinks about is Maida, the innocent one who has never told anything and now will live with other families, leaving everything behind. With his head lowered, Asuda says the Zatsu he saw might not be able to understand. Grandma Jiba simply thanks him for letting her know what happened to him in the end. Getting up with a bit of difficulty, she says she wants to breathe some fresh air, and Epha tells her not to push herself and goes to help her. Asuda also helps by running to the door to open it. With Ife's support, she steps outside. Asuda and Ife admire the beautiful sky and in it. The lady sees herself in Zatsu when they were younger. Ifo is the first to wake up, followed shortly by Asuda. She stretches both arms, and when she hears her name, she wishes the boy a good morning. Finally noticing something different, he asks if her arm is better, and she says yes, that she doesn't feel any more pain. She then puts on her fur coat and says she's going to fulfill her role as a hunter, which makes Asuda sad, because he had gotten used to having her around. Ifrei says she bothered him for too long, and now with him in the city and her in the forest, they will protect their home. She also says the leaders went to the city to report about the Sun clan who used to visit that place a lot. They are back in business. With 3 Jiba burgers in hand, Asuda hands them to Ruto, apologizing, leaving the hunter confused. Then his suit explains it's for the time the boy helped him. Ruto takes it and says that actually Asuda owes him like 20, but he'll accept this as the first payment. So when tugs on the firekeeper's shirt, and looking down he sees Hera. The girl says she was sent on a mission, and then her father said he wanted to eat some cooked Mayanmu with Jiba. Placing 4 coins on the table, she also asks for a portion for herself. While the boy cooks, something catches Vina's attention, and she hands a bit of chopped tino to Asuda, who doesn't understand. She asks him to look toward the shoe people coming toward the shop. The suitor gives terror of her order, and as she thanks him, she runs off between the men, making the boy think she was feeling shy. The shoe people asked for 11 cooked Miamis and 6 Jima burgers, and a pseudo-realizer that maybe Tara was just surprised. The boy says he'll prepare them, and one of the men calls an over and asks about how the products you bought are doing. Smiling, the boy tries to talk about how the knife is good for cutting, but he's interrupted by Vina, who pulls on his shirt. She gestures towards the necklace around his neck, making him embarrassed. Vina then says that Epha is always wearing the new necklace around her neck. Since Asuna doesn't have the courage, the girl speaks to Shu Muraru and says that Ifo wears the blue stone necklace every day and must definitely like it. Jit. While cooking, the boy thinks that Vina is paying more attention and that he shouldn't be the one receiving help but someone who helps others. With the orders ready, hand the shoe to the men. Vina comments that it feels like the D have returned to normal, and Asuda agrees, even though they haven't gone out much. Then Lido comes running and Asuda, surprised, asks if Camus sent him to deliver a message. Catching his breath, the boy nods and says his master needs to discuss something with him. Thinking it's about the stall, Asuda says they almost hit the day's goal, with Ruto eating half the burgers. Vina then says they should pack things up and she and her brother take care of the stall while Asuna leaves with Leto. Running through the streets, they arrive at the inn and, with a not-so-good expression, surrounded by papers on the table. The man says something annoying has happened, and wonders what decisions to make, and that even though he prepared, everything is ruined. Dropping his head onto the papers, he says he has a deadline of a few days, just when he no longer has a guide. Asuda grows curious about what this guide is, and Kamua asks if he forgot what his job was. While being stared at, the boy becomes thoughtful, and in the end, the two just look at each other in confusion. Irritated, the man says he explained back when they met in the forest that he was investigating as part of his escort job. That makes Asuda think it feels like he's heard about that before. He asked Kamio what he came and prepared for, and the man realizes he truly forgot. So Guy explains it to protect merchants from the city of genomes in the Eastern Kingdom. Kamiwa says that the forest path hasn't been used for a long time, but the Lord of Genos plans to restore it. With the goobas attacking everyone, he says the merchants have already suffered, and with dangerous spots like the collapse bridge, the path was abandoned. So Kamiwa says that at this time he asked for help from the forest people. But just when preparations were done, he heard the Sun family had disappeared. The man then asks if he knows anything about the clan that was supposed to be his guides. With that, Asuda thinks that the Suns broke the contract, and that's why the 3 clan leaders came to report, and that all this isn't really connected to him. Desperate, Kamua says he only has a few days and that he just needs one person from the forest. He has to find anyone. Asuda says he doesn't know about the Suns, but asks if there's anything he can do. But without much energy. The man doesn't know either. Asuda picks up one of the papers from the table and asks if it's the contract with the Suns. The man confirms and says it was made exclusively for the Suns. As a solution, Asuna offers to speak to another family that might be able to help. Surprised, the man asks if they'll do it right now, since visiting a family usually requires a lot of negotiation. Took a surprise. The boy says he's returning to the forest with some people from the Rue, and asks him to explain the details. The man then explains each detail of the contract to him. At the end of the meeting, Leto walks Asute to the door and thanks him for the help. Smiling, the firekeeper tells him not to worry, and that he'll return to make a report. As he leaves, Lita watches him looking a bit concerned. It's Gazarin who meets up with the boy and Asute apologizes to him. The man says he doesn't mind, even though the boy says he only came because the Rue clan sent him. But when he spoke with Dona, the chief said this should be the responsibility of the Rue team or the Saudi, not the Rue. Asuda says he's looking forward to working with him, and Gajarin feels the same. To start, they take the plan that had been discussed with the Sun family. Analyzing everything, Gajarin says the plan is to go through the forest from west to east, avoiding the bandits near the north and south borders, and that they also will have problems with the gibbous who will be migrating to continue eating the blessings of the mountain. But what worries the man isn't that, it's the details beyond the date and the path, like the goods and the number of guards. Asura says he doesn't know, and that Cameo only said it was an order from the Lord of Genos. And maybe that's why so many details are needed. Looking more at the plan, Gajarin says that for Genovese, the trade with the West is more valuable, and that he will talk to the Saudi clan about it. And as soon as happily thanks for the help, the representative from the Rudam and Saad, as guides while Cameo is a guard of Genus, brings his partner Zashuma. Proud of the moment, Asuda watches remembering that even though it was sudden, thanks to Gadrin's organization, the plan is going to work. The putted men enter the carts carrying sacks, and Asudo stands beside Lido, observing as they depart the F. The firekeeper decides to take care of his shop, but then someone catches his attention. The boy feels like he knows the person and the man patiently explained that he was Murano Masu, the individual who had provided him with the stall. Taking advantage of Kamui's absence, the man approached the boy and mentioned he had heard the boy was responsible for managing his own stall. Seizing the opportunity, the man pointed out that a stall was vacant and asked the boy if he thought it would be beneficial to manage several locations. Asuna felt the timing was difficult, as the Shima's visits already kept them busy, and expanding to a second stall would demand a much larger customer base. He responded by expressing his concern over the ingredients, noting their significant cost. The man suggested heading toward the mansion, hinting that something of interest might be waiting there. A sudden shout echoed from the front of the entrance building. Suda caught a familiar scent that instantly reminded him of his former life back in Japan. The sudden aroma of soy sauce caught his attention, prompting him to head inside and find its source. A man calls out, drawing his attention. He informed him that if he intended to stay, he was currently in the reception area. Asuda clarified that he didn't intend to stay as a guest, but rather as a customer. He noted that he'd heard they possessed some rather intriguing ingredients. The man then inquired if he was referring to the toss sauce. He reached out and grasped the jar containing the liquid. Asuda was taken aback, but since he wasn't entirely convinced it was actually soy sauce, he asked to try a small sample. The man expressed his willingness to help, though he cautioned that its Southern Kingdom origin would make it quite costly. After securing the sauce, Asuna headed out, clearly eager to see how it tasted. Finding the boy's behavior peculiar, the vendor began to suspect that he was the one responsible for selling jibami. The siblings are currently looking after the shop's daily operations. Rudo mentions that Asuda has returned from his meeting with the merchants, while Vina attempts to reassure the group that everything is under control. The firekeeper eventually arrived, offering an apology for the delay before announcing that he had acquired a new ingredient. He announced his intention to begin the preparations as Vina looked on. Driven by curiosity, he inquired about the contents of the jar. Lifting the lid, he presented the sauce while admitting he wasn't entirely sure what it was. Appearing slightly irritated, V9 explained that the product was a luxury item made from fermented toe grain. This leads one to believe there is a compelling reason behind it all. There was a strong possibility that the substance was simply soy sauce. To confirm their suspicions, they decided to give it a taste. Overwhelmed by the intense flavor, it collapsed to the floor, certain that the substance was indeed soy sauce. It was a flavor he believed was lost to him forever. Ruto voiced his concern upon seeing Asude in tears, while Vienna speculated that her remark about the rare product was the cause of the distress. Once he regained his composure, Asuda clarified that they were completely mistaken. He then announces his intention to create a new dish centered around the toss sauce. The siblings accepted his explanation without any further questions. The firekeeper assured him he would continue his routine as usual, already brainstorming ways to use the sauce, while the boy paused to reflect on the situation. Though his arrival was initially dominated by a series of urgent situations, he is finally free to act as he pleases, and a familiar taste from his past brings him a renewed sense of connection to Japan. An image of Epha flashed through his mind, recalling her promise that they would live together as a family. Vienna called out to him, asking if he was all right since he seemed distracted and lost in thought. He focused his efforts on developing a new recipe to help grow his business. She informed him that she and Mayamu had finished preparing the Jiba, noting that she would be using the pot next. He then stated that he would be using a different variety of meat instead. After some time had passed, his latest creation was finally complete, a single prepared cube of Jiba meat. Masuda suggested giving it a try, and both Vina and Ruto expressed their interest in doing the same. Ultimately, the entire group decided to attempt it together. Satisfied with the outcome, Asuda proposed selling his creation for double the price of standard Juba meat, earning a unanimous nod of approval from the group. The boy noted that the meat cube wasn't quite finished yet, planning to complete the process the following day. Rudo Nemesis was noticeably more energized than usual, and Vina admitted that she shared his enthusiasm. As they walked, Asuda inquired if securing more supplies would allow him to request further aid from the Ru family. Rudo felt it was far too early for such plans, but Venus suggested that Rina might be willing to assist. However, it was possible the girl wouldn't be particularly interested. He looked toward the table where his master typically sat. With the shop now expanded, the three of them began preparing for another day of sales. Vina questioned Asude on whether he intended to put the new product up for sale. He noticed that several customers had already arrived, ready to make their purchases. Overjoyed, the boy informed Dora and Tara that he would open it immediately. Both the father and daughter have come to terms with the situation. He stepped forward to be the first person to sample the new food. The student opened the container where he had stored the Jiba meat he'd previously cooked. It rested within a deep mixture of savory sauce and fruit wine. The onlookers were left completely stunned by the sight of the meat cubes. Venus remarked that they appeared even more flavorful than they had the day before. He skewered 2 cubes of meat onto a stick to ensure they wouldn't fall off. Dora immediately requested 2 servings when Asuda placed the meat on a leaf instead of wrapping it. Asuda explained that this method would better preserve the flavor, and promised to craft a bowl for him as well. Struck by a sudden inspiration, Asuna carefully placed another leaf down. They converged at the top to form a tent-like structure. He focused on completing the final preparations. Dora was delighted by the Jiba meat skewer, noting that its quality far exceeded what one would expect from a typical street stall. Initially, the boy had a very different plan in mind. He then carefully served the meal in a simple wooden bowl. He continued to eat while on the move, but the situation eventually reached a conclusion. Ultimately, utilizing the leaf proved to be the more effective choice. He looked over his work, clearly satisfied with the result. He encouraged the man to give it a try. Dora proceeded to consume the first cube. While they were busy selecting a suit, it appeared quite hesitant and lacked any real sense of confidence. With a smile, the man remarked that the dish was so delicious it didn't even taste like the gibami he was accustomed to, and he hopes Tara enjoys it too. The boy serves the cruel her portion of the skewer. Asura asks if she's not going to eat, and she just says she was thinking about how pretty and shiny it looked. The boy says it will taste even better if she eats it before it gets cold. But with the time she took, the girl notices her hands are wet, and as soon as it goes to check why, suddenly Doris steps in front of his daughter and urges her to eat quickly. He asks the firekeeper what happened, and he explains that with the time she took, the sauce ended up soaking through the leaf. Asura also says it's not good enough. Street food should still be easy and delicious to eat. He thinks that toss sauce could be a good product since it's similar to soy sauce. Discouraged, the boy says skewers don't really match with street stalls, and Dora agrees as he pays. The man says he prefers something that lasts longer so he can eat it elsewhere, like at a restaurant. The boy remembers where he bought the toss sauce. It was at a restaurant, but he says there's no way he could manage a restaurant. Then Dora tells him they should go to a restaurant right away. You surprised me, take into the place where he bought the sauce. Dora says that if the scooters sell well, the boy will need to improve the business and that he would take care of the carpentry part. That's when the boy realizes this had been his plan all along. With his head down, he goes to the restaurant owner and says he has something to discuss, thinking he'd never do this in Japan. But since he's not in Japan, more confident, he places the box on the counter and says he made a dish using the sauce, then asks if he'd accept it at the end. This makes him nervous, aware that he's doing something a bit irresponsible, but surpassing expectations. The man says he'll try it and see if it's good enough to serve. This surprises a suitor who thinks the owner is a kind person, even if he serves the rivals of his little food stall. The man gets ready to eat, serves himself the meat, and then eats, with tears in his eyes. He says it's delicious, leaving a pseudo in disbelief. By the tall sauce as he tried for years to find a way to use it in cooking, and Asuda realizes he couldn't. The man says he became a cook to try and create the perfect dish. It would be wonderful if he could succeed. Misunderstanding, Asui apologizes, saying he might have done something he shouldn't have. But the man thanks him for giving him hope that there's still a future for his sauce. Not introduces himself in hand of the contract so he can buy more of the skewers. Back at his stall, he excitedly tells Vina what happened. But he thinks that while he secured something extra outside the shop, he didn't really get a new item for the menu, and ends up feeling just like Nonus. The boy thinks about the possibilities for the toss us if you can create another recipe. A customer appears and asks for cooked miyamu with jiba meat. While preparing it, Asuda thinks that he managed to remove the jiba smell using miyamu and that they ate the grilled meat. You also remember that they ate dishes that were slowly cooked. And that sparks an idea in his mind. A student delivers the order while thinking about the method he wants to try. When night falls, dinner is prepared and my face as things look. Then he explains that these are experimental dishes from the food stall. While tasting it, faces the new food gave her a strange craving for more poutine. And Asuda thinks that's a good hint, and a shop is opened. Surprised, Vina says that the boy started preparations earlier than usual, and he explains it's because of the new product that resembles jibo, the tsukiyaki. Hearing the unfamiliar word makes the siblings react strangely. Asuda explains to Vina that he lightly cooked the meat after seasoning it with pico leaves, then did the same with fruit wine and tall sauce. Leto appears, saying he smells something mild. The boy asks for one and his tutor remembers that it's enough for him since Kamua is not around. That makes the firekeeper think that Lido has always acted like an adult and seems more like a guard dog for his master. While handing over the food, Asuda says he tried to recreate a recipe with the taste of his homeland, leaving Lido confused. The boy picks up his fruit, says it has the same shape as Mamu, and Asuda explains that he thinks that's why it was easier to distinguish flavors. Then he asks the boy to try it. Leader says the food somehow has a soft taste. Suddenly a man appears calling out to him and brings news of something terrible that happened. Kamu has returned but covered in red liquid. As soon as it looks curiously at the boat, who runs off in search of his master. Vina comments that she already imagined things would turn into a mess, and worried, Asuna wonders if something happened to Kamu. Vina calls for him and says there aren't many customers. Understanding what she means, the boy asks if it's okay for him to go check and telling him not to go too far. There's a crowd gathered and a suit of... Soon he spots the man along with Leto, and feels relieved to see that he's not badly injured. Asura asks the man what happened for him to be covered in red liquid. He says it's not his, which makes the boy worried about who it is. Camus says it belongs to the last member of the Sun family. Asuda says the man was supposed to be imprisoned in Genos to be punished for breaking the contract. That's how it should have been. We'll be right back. We'll be right back. We'll be right back. Going back to before the departure of the merchant group, Kamaiwi's slumped over a table, complaining about why the Sun family had to fall at that moment. Leto appears and says he doesn't look like he's in a good mood. The man says he had prepared a fake group to expose the Sun clan's wrongdoings, and that they expected to be attacked along the way. Ladov gives him a strange look, and Kamu apologizes for making him remember something bad. But the boy says it's his own fault for not having forgotten it yet. Then his master gets the idea of sending him to Asuna's shop. Kamu talks about the people Asuna is going to introduce him to, who would take the place of the sons, but says that this way he can send the merchants without problems. Lido then says he prays for his safety on the road. The man meets with Gajarin, and the two greet each other for a good start to their relationship. His partner says he didn't expect to interact with the forest people again, and Cameo says this time they can depart. Fake, the merchants are fake, to capture the sun to attack the last caravan, and this is the way he has been working for a long time. He'd receive information that the former clan leader would appear, and it would be ideal if Stats who attacked the merchant group. With that, he wonders if Lado will be able to move on after this. They encounter the Sun family and demand that they pay for the crime they committed 10 years ago. Kamua draws his sword and fights one of the sons, is easily defeated and thrown off the cliff, while Kamio watches cover. In his red liquid, Kamu has informed that Zatsu used the fruits that attract gibbous with the intention of attacking them. The man understands that they used the same method to attack 10 years ago, but this time they'll face them. With his sword, he eliminates the Jibas that come to attack him, and so he finishes his story and says he was red fluid, and also from another kind of thing. Looking at Lido, Asuda realizes he already knew about the plan. That's why he seems so down. Then he gets the idea to bring the new recipe to the office after closing the shop as a way to distract them. The voice catches their attention, and Gnome's old Zatsu has regained consciousness. Later recognizes the voice of the son who's calling for Tae. The boy remembers the past. In hearing Zatsu's voice asking if the goods hadn't been hidden somewhere else, Tae says that considering the kind of merchant group they are, that's all they could manage. From the forest, little Lita watches the two of them in terror. To kid him until just a while ago, everyone was happy and laughed, them awakening from the day of his trauma. Later runs in a suit it tries to follow. Old Zatsu calls for Tae, and mistaking Cameo. He says he must restore the honor of the Sun family. Seemingly finally aware, the old Goodman asks if he is a citizen of the Stone City, and his eyes widen when that is confirmed. Suddenly Zatsu becomes furious, and says they forgot the debt owed to the forest people. He accuses them of keeping the forest dwellers trapped so they wouldn't have to hunt Jibas with their own hands. While Asuda tries to protect Leto, Master Kamiwa stands as an imposing figure in the face of those words. Zatsu says the wealth should be theirs since he entirely guided those corrupt citizens on the right path, then seeming not to care about anything anymore. The cameo reveals that Tai's son is no longer among the living. Confused, the old man doesn't want to believe it. But Camus says all that was left of his son was his red fluid and obsession, while showing you stay in cloak. Shadowy hands grasp old Zetsu will cry out for his son. Staring at hand with no emotion, Kamua tells him to accept judgment. The old man is left on the ground and the guard comes to get him, telling him to get up while tying him with rope. Unable to do anything else, he accepts his fate while the Suda and young Leto watch, hand on his disciple's head. Then he tells Leto that it's all over, as the boy's innocent eyes shine. The image of Leto's family forms in his mind, everyone smiling as if saying goodbye, now finally free. The figures fade into the distance and the small boy cries, finally seeing his people receive justice. Then Kamua announces that he'll return to work. Asuda calls out to them, and the master asks what he wants. The boy then says that if he agrees, they should try together the new recipe he created while outside the city. Smiling calmly, the man agrees. Camille appears, and Asuda asks about the boy, seeing that he's alone. The man explains that Leto fell asleep probably from exhaustion, and a firekeeper says he figured that might happen. Finding it odd, Kamua asks what he means by that. Then his suit explains that he figured Leto was relieved since he seemed worried the entire time he was out of town. Smiling, Kamua agrees that the boy was concerned about his work. Asuda says it was more than just the work, that the boy was waiting for his return. Imagine the boy worried and then finally relieved. Kamiwa smiles and says everything must be okay now. Seeing that the matter is resolved, a man asks for 2 portions of the new food, one for him and one for Leto. He also says he'll eat with the boy as soon as he returns. Asuda thanks him for always choosing to come back to his little shop for other people. It's hard to understand what's inside someone else's heart, but if Nether wants to change their relationship, isn't it okay to stay that way? And in his sleep, the boy calls out the name of his master. Asuda is focused on cooking a queue of kiba meat. Epha appears and says it's been a while since he started whispering something while cooking. Apologizing, he asks if she got curious, and of course, she did. She asked if he's worried about the food and offers to do a taste test. Asuda says it really is about cooking and smiling because she was right. She says she's happy to try it. But the boy says he doesn't need a test, crushing her excitement. He says he needs some time. Then he asks if she's disappointed, and if I simply says she understands, and when he asks if she's okay, she gives the same answer. A new workday begins, and they set up the stall for another day of sales. Vina asks Asub if he's taking the boiled cubes to the 3 major pavilions, and he confirms. Thanks to Nautis, the cubes are now on the menu at the first-floor restaurant of the 3 major pavilions. However, the problem is that Asuda needs at least 2 or 3 hours to prepare them. Even though he manages to make the meal, it's taking up the boy's time. He worries about offering only one type of dish, so if he thinks about what he should do. But for now, all he needs to do is light the fire. Crouch down, tending to it when a familiar voice calls out, saying, "They heard about a new recipe." Asuna looks up already knowing who it is. The Shiva men are back and their representative asks how much the new food costs. The boy welcomes them and says he'll prepare the meal. Taking advantage of their presence, to ask Shumerl if he knows of any restaurants in Genos that sell culinary items. Upon confirmation that, Voice says he'd like to know about places that make special dishes. It doesn't have to be with rare ingredients. It's as usual. Men gather to discuss. This makes her Suda worry if it was wrong to ask them that. Then the man says they'll tell him about the new dishes, but only after they eat. Excited to boy thanks them for that. Ruto says goodbye to Asuda since he and Vino will take care of the shop. Shumerl walks with the boy, who is excited about everything. He realizes this is the first time he's using his time to walk around the city. They enter a building. Asuda thinks all the houses in the city look similar and feels happy that the man showed him the way. Services. They're in a restaurant and thinks they might have Ingredients on the menu. Schumer will calls for someone, which surprises the boy with how quickly someone shows up. Someone walks through a door asking if it's a customer. The man, not seeming very friendly, asks if they're merchants, even feeling a little afraid. Asuda manages to answer and says they're just customers. The man asks if they want to eat and tells them to have a seat. But Asuda quickly says they just came to buy rare ingredients used in the restaurant. Not understanding, the man says he doesn't know what would be rare enough for him. Show me the box. He brought a suit. Says he made it with ta sauce, which is rare for him. Understanding the level of rarity, a man brings out a few things. He shows Tina with Cheeto in Miami, which is like a pickle in a broth of Nara salt leaves and ramen of fruit juice. The other item is made from the hardened milk of Jama. In the end, the items aren't just common mints, but processed foods. Looking at them, Miss Suna recognizes them as kimchi and cheese. He looks curiously at the red item, the Tino mix for Cheeto. The man says that giamimi has a very strong flavor, so it's eaten with cheetah fruit. Then the boy understands that Chidu is a seasoning like pico leaves. Thinking, Asuda wonders what kind of stimulating flavor Cheeto has. If it's bitter, spicy, or like kimchi. Then he asks if the man can sell it for the suggested price. But a pair of them, the vendor has a different one. Walking through the street, the boy happily thanked Schumerl. The man says no need for thanks, he just hopes for the new dish he's excited about. Saying goodbye, Asuda says he'll do his best. Then he stops by the restaurant to deliver the cooked jibakus. Smiling, the kind man says sales are a success, and he wants to keep buying. That makes the boy's eyes shine with happiness. He then says goodbye to the man to return to his work. Tuna looks at his new ingredient, eager to try a new recipe. The rude siblings drop a suit off at his house, and he thanks then as he says goodbye. He lets her find that he's back. The girl was sitting on the floor, and he asked if she's not feeling well. Excited, the boy says he got new ingredients, but Ifat doesn't seem as excited as he is. Asuda says tonight's meal will be a new test and asks if that's okay with her. The girl responds, and that ends up making Asuda worried. He looks at her and realizes something happened to make her feel so down. Asuda puts the bag of new ingredients on the table and picks up the point in dough. He walks over to the girl and asks what she would think if he made hamburgers. Hitting the right note, the girl immediately gets excited and says it could serve as a taste test. To be sure, she asked again if this time she can do a taste test on him. And Asuda agrees. Asuda opens one of the new ingredients, deciding to start with what looks like cheese. The pan is heating, so the he tosses it in, making the thing melt and look like a ghost. This scares Epha, who asks what it is, but not even he knows. He stretches the melted stuff and she asks how far it can stretch. Asuda accepts the challenge, and when he pulls more, it breaks, making Ifa shout and then say, disappointed at it snapped. With that little broken piece in hand, the boy tastes it. In the end, he says it's cheese and the texture is just like commemorate. But Ifa is out of patience and says she doesn't know what he's talking about. She just wants to try it. While preparing the meat, Asuda adds the sauce, spreading your roam throughout the area. That surprises If and makes her mouth water. She says it's the same smell she noticed last time, and Asuda says it's the toss-up. Us. Feeling more confident about cooking, she says the ingredient that would go best with it is poitin. But Asuda puts a slice of cheese on top. Desperate. Girl asks why he put the stretchy thing on it, but with everything ready, Asuda simply says he'll serve it on a wooden plate. Still watching, Iface says the smell is making her hungry. He finally presents the dish with a new recipe and calls it teriyaki cheese hamburger. Excited to eat, she takes the plate. Put your stares at it. And he asks if everything's okay. Suda then realizes she remembers burning herself with a hot juice from the last hamburger. Even though she really wants to eat it, she knows she should wait. Worried, the boy says she should eat it while it's still hot. Using a spoon, she cuts a piece of meat and like a child has fun watching the cheese stretch. Finding it amusing, Asuna warns her not to drop it. She takes the first bite, and within seconds her eyes water from the hot meat in her mouth. Unable to speak, she signals for help from Asuda, who doesn't understand at first. Eiffel just shakes her head trying to indicate what's happening, and the boy interprets it as if the food isn't good. Asuda looks at the steam coming from the hot meat and then at her. With much effort, she swallows the piece of meat, then takes it. Another and another until she finishes all of it. Then Asura asks what she thought of the new food. Very happily, she says it's delicious. Better than anything she's eaten so far. Epha then tells him to be proud of his new creation. Asuda looks at the empty wooden plate she handed over and smiles, thanking her for what she said. Ready to leave, he tells her how Go prepares some poisons for her. However, she calls him and asks if he has a minute to talk. Realizing it might be serious, he removes his headband. She sits on the ground and suddenly says, "It's been 2 months." This confuses the boy, and she explains that it's the time since they met. He sits beside her and, smiling, realizes it really has been that long since he arrived. But Eiffel doesn't seem as cheerful as he is, and at the end, she cheers up and says it's time for them to celebrate by eating hamburgers with meat. Asuda gets excited too, tying his headband back on, ready to cook more. Everything is ready when Asuda, pleased, places the plates of food on the ground, and Ifall lights the fire to brighten the space. While eating, he notices that the hamburger with cheese tastes better when it's still hot. The girl happy while eating, he decides to leave the rest for her. Are prepared to suit all kinds of customers. Smiling, Asuda serves another order. The stall now has 3 new dishes on the menu, and the cooked meat cues are a big hit. However, they're lacking staff to help with so many tasks. While the Miami was cooking, Asuda asked for a pile of area to be chopped. Another shift comes to an end, and everyone is exhausted, a bit sheepish, as to ask Ruto if he would mind if they bought something on the way back. The young hunter doesn't look very excited and asks if you shouldn't be looking for more people to help. He says yes, but he has no idea who would be the right person for the job. But an excited Venus, as she has an idea about that. They are guided to the Ru clan's village, and the boy is left confused. She asks the suitor to wait a moment, and announces to the whole village that they're back. Curious, the boy wants to know what she's plotting from one of the houses. Rana comes out looking not very pleased, and tells Vina it's not fair. Asuda then becomes nervous at the girl's appearance. Reina asks her sister if she's that excited just because she got to eat in the city. With her charm and air of mystery, she simply replies that it's a secret. Observing their interaction, Asuda realizes that Vina is teasing her sister and wants to understand her goal. Then Reina said she'll also go to the city to help, revealing that this was Vina's evil plan for new labor all along. Excited that it works, she calls out to Asuba and asks if he heard that. Curious, Rana wants to know why the boy is in the village and why he's hiding. The only thing he says is that he doesn't have an excuse. Vienna then tells Asuda that her idea is right in front of them, referring to her sister. Not understanding anything, Rina asks what she means by that. Her older sister then explains that Asuda's stall is doing very well, and because of that, he's thinking about hiring someone to help. Smiling, Vina says that since she wants to participate, they'll count on her help. That's when Rihanna realizes she's fallen into her sister's plan. Thinking about the idea, Rihanna asks if they really want her help, and remembers she can't ignore her duties as a servant, so Suda drops his knees and says he knows he's asking for a lot. Seeing startles her, and she asks if what he's doing is some kind of ritual. He explains it's a ritual from his country, done when people want to make a sincere request. To help the situation, Vina says that it shows great determination. Thinking for a moment, Reina says she'll try to get permission to go with him. The boy is very happy and thankful, just like Vina. Venus says they should first take him to the family. However, Ruto doesn't seem very pleased and walks away even as Reina asks where he's going. Another workday begins now with the newest employee after hearing the whole story. Samuel understands the reason for the girl's presence. On guard, Ruto watches everything, while complaining that even though Reina joined, he still has to carry everything. Having heard him, his sister turns around, still smiling, says she came to help with the stall. A move between them doesn't seem great, and even cameo Nebuses. To try to fix things, Asuda asks Rana to calm down and offers more products for Ruto to try. Camilla asks if they're having trouble with the load and says that if that's the case, they need a Totosu. Asura asks what's gotten into him, and once again, he says that to carry the load, they need a Totosu. Saying you already heard the first time, the boy asks what that oddly named thing is. Then Kamua says they're the animals that were tied to the cart for last time. The boy asks if it's the burger that looks delicious, and thinks about the parts that can be eaten, like thigh, wing, gizzard, and liver. Taking advantage of the conversation, Kamiwa says one of the Totosu they had escaped into the forest, which Asu defines very convenient for him to mention now. Continuing, the man says he wanted to recover the animal but couldn't find it, and he says that if someone finds it, there's no way to prove it's his. He thinks he's being persuasive by the way the boy is looking at him, and a suit asked him to place his order because a line is forming. So he orders 3 Jiba burgers and 2 Tsukiyaki Giba. While the boy delivers the order, Kamuel once again says it would be nice if he had a wild Totosu. And picking up his food, he tells the boy not to forget and to be careful with the Totosu. Having heard the conversation, Rihanna asks if the ma'am is asking them to get a Totosu. Asuda says he has no idea and Vina doesn't understand either. But they return to focusing on serving customers. On the way back, once again, Rudo complains about having to carry everything, and Vina asks him not to say anything more. Thinking about it, Asuda says they really do need to find a solution for that. Then in his mind, he hears Cameo repeatedly shouting about the Totosu. Suddenly, something catches Rudo's attention. Throws everything to the ground to grab his sword. The boy asks everyone to stay back. The 3 are confused and rude. Stares at the dark cloud, quickly approaching, but it's just really rude riding on a giant bird. Ask why she's riding the animal? And the girl says she captured it. Curious, as she would ask the girl where she found it, and she replies it was in the forest. Which reminds him once again of Cameo saying the same thing. The older sisters look on, smiling at Rimi riding a wild Totosu. Vina checks and notices there's no seal, so Rana concludes it's indeed wild. However, as soon as it doesn't look very excited on. On another day of selling, Camus, what he hears about the capture to Totosu. But the sisters don't seem happy. Asuda says he would like the man to check if it's the animal he lost. With his mouth full of food, he agrees to take a look. They're in the forest, and Kamwa looks at the bird and asks Lita what he thinks. Camus says the boy is more knowledgeable when it comes to animals. Inspecting the bird, Leto says it has no injuries and seems used to humans. Asuda asks if that's a good thing, leaving the boy confused. Finishing his analysis, leadership. The animal is strong and will be easy to sell. Kamua asks how well the animal works for carrying loads. Inspecting further, Leto gives a command and the bird sits down. He says it's well trained. Han asks Asuade if he knows how to ride it to a kyosu, and he replies that Rimi was riding it. Without much interest, Ruto says their sister was more hanging on than actually riding. Then Lino offers to teach Asuna how to ride. The boy climbs onto the animal and screams in desperation. Young Leo holds the Totosu and tells him he's got it, so he doesn't need to panic. Asuda says that without his saddle he can't hold on and it feels like being on a falling bicycle. In desperation, the boy clings to the feathers. Back on the ground, Leto says he'll get used to it soon. In the meantime, I have Fred appears and asks what he's doing there. She notices the animal in a sub-expo. He's learning how to ride it. The girl gets very excited and asks if she can try too. Asura asks if she's ever ridden one before and she says no. While she looks at the bird curiously, Leto offers to help, but surprise. Using everyone, Epha gives the commander for the bird to sit. And when it does, she climbs onto the top Tosu. Then she orders it to stand. And the bird obeys, leaving Asudot in shock. She sets off on a little adventure on the animal. Even Leto is surprised and asks if it's really her first time. Proudly, Asuda says yes as he watches her happily. She returns for her venture and thanks to boys saying she. Getting off the top Tosu, she pets the animal, which accepts her affection. Observing the scene, Kamiwa says the bird seems to like her, then asks the girl if she'd like to keep the Totosu. Asuda asks if she's okay with the responsibility of taking care of the bird. Content. She pets the Totosu and happily says they'll live together with the Jiruru. The boy says she already gave it a name. And if it asks if that's a problem, time on Todd's channel.